Thank you.
Board of Selectmen. Invite everyone to join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this is exciting. Full house tonight.
Yes,
As there usually is when we have a firefighter swearing in.
not a parking space on.
So I'll invite the chief to give us a bit of an overview.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks again for having us. Just want to recognize the McAllister family here tonight. Looking forward to a long future with Ian. He's done a great job, and we're glad to have him. A couple people I just want to recognize real quickly. If you recall, last time when I started this, we ended up having the alarm come in, and the guys had to run out. So we're going to try and get this in tonight without that happening. But I want to recognize John McGuire right here. John McGuire is a retired deputy chief, and he has been a historian here for the North Andover Fire Department. He does the history of the badge every year. He comes in and makes sure there's photographs taken of the firefighters. John did forget to bring my paperwork for the history of the badge, but badge 54, there's not a lot of history to it. Only one firefighter prior to Ian receiving that tonight had it was Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins began his career here in North Andover in 2012. In 2018, Chris had transferred to Haverhill Fire, so he's currently a firefighter in Haverhill. Ian will be receiving badge 54, and he's going to create his own history, and he's already started that. I just want to say a few comments from two of the lieutenants that have worked with Ian. His current lieutenant is Jeff Gardside, who was sworn in as a lieutenant a few weeks ago. Jeff has completed Ian's last evaluation, and his comments were excellent. Always shows up ready to work, takes pride in his job, always willing to learn and work, always asking questions, already furthering his education by attending academy courses. His last lieutenant was Lieutenant Scott Nussbaum, who's here tonight. Scott has transferred to Station 2. He's now the lieutenant on Unit 4. Scott said, Ian brings a positive attitude every day to work. He stays involved with every aspect of the job and is always asking pertinent questions. He is extremely reliable. Anytime I ask him, he answers, I can do that. I know that I and the entire department can count on him. He always wants to get involved and lend a hand where he can. During the Columbia gas emergency, Ian was at the fire academy. When he finished his day, he immediately came to the command post and asked what he could do to help out. We sent him to the staging area where mutual aid fire companies from all over the state were waiting for assignments. He did a great job assisting Lieutenant Hebert with sending these mutual aid companies to numerous calls. He is also a very good EMT and treats every patient with compassion, care, and respect. I have no doubt that Ian will continue to excel and have a great career with the North Andover Fire Department. That's Lieutenant Nussbaum, who's here also tonight. So, Ian began his career here at North Andover Fire on March 5th, 2018. He completed his one-year probationary period. He did quite well at the Fire Academy. He was above average in all the practical and all the written exams. So we're glad to have him. He's just been a pleasure to have. He's well-liked, as you can see from the turnout that is here tonight. Not only the on-duty guys, but the off-duty firefighters are here also. That's how much he means to the department. So we're glad to have him, and we're looking forward to a long future with him. So, the other person I'd like to recognize is Joyce Bradshaw. I don't think I just expect Joyce to be here, but I know she enjoys this, but we truly appreciate every time you're being here and making this what it really is. We look for, and there we go.
Oh, no.
But we're going to see who's stepping out.
Gotta go. Every time.
Okay, we got a little further this time. Okay, so again, I just want to thank Joyce Bradshaw for always being here for us. We really do truly appreciate
This
this.
is the best part of my job. I love it, and
Yeah.
it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do this. Because as I look at all the faces, I feel older and older. And we are just so blessed to have such fantastic people that work for us. And we're always appreciative of everything you all do.
Well, thank you. So,
Right here. And raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Solemnly promise and affirm that I will faithfully, honestly, sincerely, and impartially perform all the duties that are incumbent upon me as a firefighter for the town of North Andover, so help me God. Just gonna have you sign this for me. Just put the date, which is March. Congratulations, you have a wonderful family. Okay, sign that for me right there. Perfect, Pete.
we're going to ask if Katie can come up, Ian's wife, to pin the badge on Ian.
That's great.
No, I always invite, you're welcome if you want to say anything. I don't. All right, again, thank you. We'll see you shortly in a few weeks. We have another firefighter that will be completing their year probation, Nick Martone, so we'll be here shortly in a few more weeks. Okay, but thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let them file out a minute before we continue the meeting. Yeah. Do I have a second to pass it out? Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment. I'll just remind everyone, if you're here for public comment, that we do not engage in sort of a back and forth dialogue during public comments. It's an opportunity for the public to share their thoughts and opinions on things. I will ask each public comment to limit their comments to 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, if you don't mind, since we've got a lot on our agenda tonight.
May I ask you, Madam Chair, so if there's an issue we're going to discuss, will you take comment then, or should they do it now, just because some people might misunderstand?
Thank you. I would prefer all comments tonight, now for any item on our agenda. So we will obviously be able to comment upon your comment during the time on the agenda that we are discussing the item. So we won't, as I said, since more people are coming in, I'll repeat myself. We will not engage in a back and forth dialogue during the public comment time. We'll just accept public comments at this time on any topic on the agenda or otherwise. And I would ask you to limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, considering we've got quite a crowd and quite a busy agenda. So I'll take the first, yes?
Are you taking comments as the agenda item comes up?
No, sorry, we're taking all public comments now, regardless of topic, because this is not we're not having any sort of public hearing. This is simply a time for public comments. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to say anything to us for contemplation or consideration at any time to give your comment now.
For anything that's on the agenda?
For anything on the agenda or not, any item. So let's begin. Thank you. Sorry. I forget people haven't been here for this in the past necessarily. So I ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address. So I think we have a sign-up sheet there. Okay, we might not. So just state your name and address, please, and give your comment.
So my name is Deborah Dulesky Najjar. I'm a resident of North Andover, and I also am the owner of 865 Turnpike Street, units 209 to 211. And I am here both as an abutter and as a representative of the Condo Association on the matter that is before the Licensing Commission. Item B, request of Greenlight Auto Transport LLC for a Class 2 license at 865 Turnpike. So with that said, on behalf of the Condo Association, as well as my personal opinion as a butter, I've not had the privilege of meeting the Daouds and the Abdallahs, but I want to make sure and don't object to their application to obtain a Class 2 license for 865 Turnpike. However, I would respectfully request the Licensing Commission to put the restrictions on that license to be clear that as a condo association, we don't have an issue in enforcing the use. This 865 Turnpike is the brick buildings that are just after Stop and Shop on Turnpike Street. It's a professional office complex and already quite a busy area. There are days that there aren't really that many parking spots available. We've pulled the comments that were posted electronically, and Trooper Charles Louise had said that he didn't object to the approval of the license, but wished that the license specified wholesale only, dealer to dealer, no retail sales. We also had the comment on the file that's from the fire department that said that they don't have an issue with the request as long as the building will not be compromised by additional vehicles. There are no vehicles that are permitted by the Condo Association that for lease or for sale or unplated or what have you. So we would like to be sure that that is in the restriction, that no vehicles, other than, of course, for their employees who are working, would be on the premises. And then also the community development office also said that he found the use allowable for their office space, but no cars are to be stored or repaired at the location. So we share, as a condo association and as an abutter, those same concerns, and would respectfully ask that, assuming that this license is granted, that it expressly contain those restrictions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noted. Next up.
Good evening. My name is Joe Reardon. I live at 62 Parker Street, and I really appreciate the chance to make a couple of comments about the recreation complex, of which you'll be hearing an update tonight. Let me start at the end of what I had to say. What my two main points are is that there are what I would describe as very serious concerns within the neighborhood over field lighting and the artificial turf. I'll back when I say that. A lot of meetings, emails, phone calls. There's a number of neighbors here tonight. There are a lot who couldn't be here tonight, but the neighborhood is very concerned over those two particular issues and others, but those are the two that I wish to address right now. I'll take a step back, as I did at last week's planning board meeting, and begin by saying I strongly support this project. I think it's a fabulous thing that this town, that we are all doing for our town. It's going to benefit all the people of the town, but particularly the young people and the generations to come. At that March 5th planning board meeting, I asked a question, which was why we needed lights on the playing fields. And I got a couple of, why are you asking that question, responses. But I asked it because I wanted to know why we could not build literally the best complex money can buy, the best complex in the state of Massachusetts, and use it during daylight hours. The answer that I got, and I'm paraphrasing, and that I don't have the direct text, but it was basically that what we've said from the beginning, that there were going to be lights in the field, and more specifically, we need lights to maximize the use of the fields. To get the most efficient use out of them, we need lights. Well, that second point, obviously, there's no other way of looking at it. It implies that the fields, I should say, will be used after dark. And that is a dramatic change, a very dramatic change for the neighborhood. All the issues that have been identified at meetings like this, be it parking, traffic congestion, noise, general upheaval, those things end for us in that neighborhood at sunset, and that standard operating procedure. By installing lights, we're extending that for, I don't know how long, but certainly much longer than it is right now. So again, my question was why do we need lights, not have lights been planned from the beginning? Some members of the planning board seemed genuinely interested in the question, and I was really pleased by that. Another question came up kind of as the meeting went on and after the meeting is, why is this coming up now? The project's been going on for a couple of years. Any project, be it doing a room over in your house, building a house, or a 16-acre project like this, requires planning. And it starts with if I'm building a house, I say, hey, there's my piece of land. The house is going to go there, the driveway's going to go there, the backyard's going to be there. I'm not talking about where the outlets are going to be in the basement when I'm envisioning the project. So when the citizens of this town went to town meeting last year, we looked at conceptual drawings, as we should have. There shouldn't have been anything else available at that point. But that's what we saw. Conceptual drawings, which gave us a bird's eye view that said there's going to be a field here, there's a school, here's the parking area, this and that. That's what we saw, and that's what we should have seen. And that's what I and many others enthusiastically voted for. There were no lights on there. There shouldn't have been lights on there, but they weren't there, is my point, when we made that vote. I looked back at the committee meeting minutes of the committee, and let me just give a plug to them. They've been doing a fabulous job. I looked at their minutes, and the last reference that I saw to lighting, I could be wrong, somebody can correct me if I am, was on March 21st of 2017. And there had only been a few comments before that about lighting. They were all very general. There'll be lighting. And it's good there'll be lighting. There were a couple of those, but there were a couple of, oh yeah, the fields will be lit. There was no detail, no anything. And again, that last comment was on March 21st of 2017, 2 years ago. The details of the lighting have only become available to us since the January 22nd, 2019 Planning Board meeting, less than 2 months ago. So it was at that meeting that we heard the term 80-foot and 60-foot, quote, big boy, end quote, big boy. These are big towers that support these lights. That's where that was first discussed. And we also learned that 4 of those towers are going to go on the other side of the fence from the abutters' homes. So you've got a house, you've got a small yard, you've got a fence, and you've got a big boy. That, I think you might understand, caused some concern in the neighborhood. Subsequently, there were 2 site visits scheduled to Merrimack College and to the General Lawrence Technical School. At Merrimack, a number of neighbors, as I understand, attended that session, and the general impression I got from talking to those neighbors was they were stunned by the amount of light that was put out on that field. The next night, there was a visit to Greater Lawrence. My wife took part in that, along with 2 members of the planning board and a couple other citizens. I understand that the full 5 members of the planning board were at the first site visit. At this second one, I came home from work that night. I said to my wife, what did you think? And she said, and I'm quoting, it's less obnoxious. That's what she said. So it's still obnoxious, but it's less obnoxious. And that made me a little sad to think that if that's the standard that we have in North Andover, less obnoxious, I know we're better than that. So with those things having just happened, we went to the March 5th Planning Board meeting and raised the issues. There was a subsequent suggestion made after the meeting about putting some limits on the use of the lights. I think that was a very good faith offering, and we really appreciate it. It showed an interest to listen to us. I don't think it does what we need done here. The reason being, once those lights are in, they are in. And I have no questions about the people on this board, the other town boards that are in existence right now, the people who live in the neighborhood right now. That's all going to change. We know that. Some of us are going to leave. We're going to move on. Committee members are going to move on. Board members are going to move on. There's going to be different people. Things can change. And once they're in there, I think the temptation to use them as a revenue source for the town, or just to say, hey, we want to play later, we want to have a festival, we want to do this or that, is going to be too great for a small, there's been a suggestion of a committee, and for a couple of people representing the neighborhood to really have influence on that committee, I think is in question. When I mentioned compromise at the meeting, a neighbor got up and said, would it be possible to maybe put field lights on the upper field where they are now, but not on the lower field? That was pretty much summarily dismissed. So while I was glad to hear the term compromise, I have to question how sincere it was, because there was also a compromise mentioned on the turf, and let me just mention quickly the turf.
Can I just ask you to try and...
I'll be as quick as I can.
Thank you.
Be as quick as I can. I'm speaking so all the others don't.
I
Okay?
assumed you probably were, since I was
Okay.
at the planning board meeting, and
Right.
I got
Right.
it.
But the others weren't, so I would like
I
them to hear what I
appreciate
have to say and what the neighbors have to say.
I will.
The committee, so again, I looked at the committee minutes regarding turf. A lot of comments on turf, most all of them positive, and most all of them based on maintenance. And most all of them from leagues and associations and, I guess, users of the fields. And I understand that. It's obviously easier to maintain a turf field than a grass field. But I'm hoping, and I believe that the ease of maintenance would not come before health and safety. There are many types of artificial fields and many concerns over them. We asked the Board of Health, the Planning Board, to contact the Board of Health and ask for an opinion on this. They had given an opinion on strictly the lead aspect of the artificial turf. It needs to be much more in-depthly studied, and we need to know what people are going to be breathing. The comparison with the high school was brought up. We have turf fields at the high school. There are no abutters at the high school to speak of like this. Again, house, small yard, turf is what we're going to have here. And we're going to have people there 365 days a year, as opposed to 2 or 3 hours when they visit the high school for an event. So I'll stop there, and I think you know my points there too. We're very concerned over the lights on the field and the turfs, and I really appreciate the opportunity to express that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? I was asking any other public comments. It looks like you're you're next. If you, I ask you to give your name and address, please, and try and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes.
North Andover. I want to say thank you guys for having us. I missed everything. Right off the bat, I think I support everything you guys want to do here. I think it's going to be great for the community. It's going to be great for our kids, there's a lot. But my little guy, he was acting up outside, so we didn't bring him in. My only and biggest concern is, not my only, but my biggest concern is the health of his future, you know? I just really hope that when it comes down to the bottom line, I want everybody to, right now, Mother Nature's not affecting us, you know, as a whole. And the town of North Andover could directly affect my boy's future, you know? So I really need you guys to think about, don't approve anything that would potentially hurt us. That's all, you know, in a health and safety manner. Other than that, I really, really, really hope that this is going to be great for everyone, you know. My neighbors are awesome. I moved into a outstanding neighborhood. A lot of great Caucasians, you know what I mean? No, outstanding. The angriest man I've ever met in my life is my best friend. You know, yeah, I love them so much, you know, and I just hope that, you know, we all have a time to be able to move into a place that we live, you know. It's really, really important to us. I love you guys.
Do we have any other? Thank you, sir. Do we have any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Margaret Legal, and I live at 26 Hemlock Street, and I've also been a little bit vocal at the planning board meetings because I am a direct abutter to the new complex, which I also think is and could be a great opportunity for a lot of things. However, as our neighbors, even though you don't live next door to us or you don't abut the field, you are our neighbors, and we are appealing to you to help us out here. It's a question of a couple things. One, Jamal has touched on, and that is the artificial turf that really needs to be scrutinized. It's, in many cases, very, very dangerous. I've supplied the planning board and to supply the Board of Health with the information with references and options, and it really, I can't stress it enough, and you also can look it up. It's hazardous, it's lethal, it's carcinogenic, and I don't have to go on any further about that. Please, as neighbors, could you look at that? Especially the crumb rubber, which is, it smells, and that's very hot up there in the summer. It gives off gases, and that's our air. It's your children's air, it's everybody's air, and we really need to be caretakers of the environment. And I'm not just saying this to be corny. It's a real fact. And someone said the state of Massachusetts allows it. Well, they allow selling of cigarettes. I mean, you can't go there. We have to make our own judgments. That is our home. It's where you go to have peace and quiet. It's where we go to have peace and quiet. It's where we have our own refuge. We want to be grossly invaded. And in some cases, that's a lot of what we see happening, which is my next concern, which is the lights. Again, I'm appealing to you as neighbors, for our neighbors. The lights are a gruesome intrusion. The ones that are up there have been on minimally over the years. We've been there for 35 years. I'm not begrudging the kids a night game here and there, but when you put up massive poles with massive lights, with massive glow, we are being invaded. They're just too close to the abutters. That should not be there. The field, the lights, anything. And as I said, we are appealing to you as neighbors to help us out. We would like to think that as officials and elected officials, that you would look out for our health and safety. We can all enjoy this recreational park. We can all enjoy the open space. That's what it's for. Please do not just bulldoze it into our neighborhood and think that we're just going to accept it, because we can't. We can't. We don't want to, and we can't. And we need to be responsible. You need to be responsible. We all need to be responsible and use a little common sense. And I think in some cases, it hasn't been used, especially as a direct abutter. I've invited people over to see how close I am. Regina has nicely come by. She agreed that we're sitting right on top of it, as is Jamal, my neighbor next door, on both sides and down the way. It's just a huge intrusion with the lights and the artificial turf, plus other things. The walk lights, I mean, it's going to look like Wrigley Field out there. We don't have as many street lights as you're going to have walk lights on that, according to the plans that we've seen. And thank you for your time. Appreciate your work.
Do we have any other comments?
Hi, Kim Reardon, 62 Parker Street. I'm going to try to touch upon things that haven't been brought up, but I might have to quickly reference something. Lights and turf obviously been brought up. I would like to add to the permitted uses of the field is a big factor, okay? How many months of the year, how many days of the week, and what hours? Also, I want to point out that at the 2018 town meeting, Article 9 transferred the school parcels to the Board of Selectmen so that the care, custody, control, and management were transferred from the school to the Board of Selectmen. I would point out, I think that blurs the lines a little bit between what is used for school purposes and by the rest of the town. I bring that up because Title IX was brought up as a factor at the planning board meeting last week. I would say if we're going to be concerned about Title IX issues, we might have been more concerned about that when we eliminated the softball field at the high school to put in the new fire department. So I'm just pointing that out. I also point out that these fields would no longer be on school property. In minutes, the field committee meeting minutes of May 2017, the athletic director at the time stated that softball team would stay at McAvoy. The likely users of these new fields would be the freshman football and soccer teams. That the boys varsity baseball team would likely use the new fields because the high school field is in bad shape. Well, let's not just accept that as, oh, well, that field is in bad shape, so let's just build a whole new one. You got a field right there at the high school. Let's make it usable. And my understanding is that they are planning on continuing using that field. It's just not great. That high school was only built in 2005, and I read the meeting minutes. Back then, we were talking about putting in these new fields, and that there needed to be a commitment on the part of the town to maintain these fields, that there has to be a commitment, okay? So if part of the excuse of this building, you know, the new fields for the use of the boys' baseball team is because their current field at the high school is in bad shape, do something about the field at the high school. That would just be my suggestion. I would also like to point out somebody who's very knowledgeable about use of fields pointed out that some teams prefer to play on grass. Turf is great when you have to start practices, you know, early in the season, you know, April, May, when there might still be snow or not ideal conditions. But when you actually get into playing season, that many teams actually prefer to play on grass. In the interest of time, we'll probably be reaching out to many of you individually through emails and maybe meetings, other meetings. I would encourage the spirit of compromise. That's been brought up a couple of times. I hope that that is a sincere spirit here. I just wanted to be on the record, and it's been said, but I do want to reiterate that I think the close proximity of this complex to our homes warrants extra special consideration. The recreation complex is an awesome project, as many others have said. We're not against the project, but I don't know if there's another neighborhood in Massachusetts that has a similar setup with a complex of the magnitude and scope of this one wedged in, and someone used the term shoehorned in so closely to another neighborhood. If there is another situation like that, I would love to know where it is so that there's precedent, and maybe we could look at that and see how that was resolved. But I have the sneaking suspicion that this might be a very unique situation, and I would just really like special consideration given to our neighborhood. So, thank you.
Do we have any other public comments?
Hi, my name is Eric Holden, and I live at 21 Spruce Street. And I'm in a butter, according to the planning board, because I get the certified letters. Been in meetings with my fellow neighbors, and what we've received is a document published by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. I'll leave a copy on the table here. It talks about the ATFs, the artificial turf, and some of the warnings is don't use ATFs on extremely hot days because the crumb rubber absorbs heat and may be too hot to play on when temperatures are high, and do not use ATFs for passive recreation, which means no sitting or lying on the artificial turf. So if you're tired and you're just resting or you want to go for a picnic, you cannot sit on it. It's not healthy. It's a document, I'm not going to read through it. You can read through it, you can go online and find it, but I will leave it here. Just urge you not to make any approvals of this project other than the layout is fine, but what they're installing for lights in the turf, it's just too much. And we're asking to hold off. We're trying to talk to the Board of Health to get their input, the planning board, work with them. There needs to be sessions where the abutters are brought in with the designers of this complex.
I appreciate everyone's public
And so-
comments here tonight, and I am in no way trying to suggest that you should not be making them. You absolutely should, but just since now you're the second person I think has said something about us giving approval, and I just want to be clear that this board is not granting the approval for any project. It's not on our agenda. It's already been approved by the citizens from a conceptual phase, as you guys stated in town meeting, and now it's before the planning board, and the only approvals that are in flight right now are the planning board and the conservation commission, which are in the midst of approving it. So we will discuss at our portion when we get an update on the project, things that we might be able to do based on what we're hearing.
It's on the agenda tonight.
To get an update on the project,
update,
so that we can understand. And so I appreciate these
You don't know
comments.
that.
Yeah,
You just know you're gonna discuss it.
yeah, no, that's fair,
and stuff,
and that's why I
so
wasn't
we're just asking
begrudging
that
you.
If anyone's asking for your approval about it after you
Yeah.
get the update, please hold off until,
Understood.
you know.
I just wanted to be clear that
Yep.
we're not sitting in front of some process right now that is waiting for our stamp of approval, just to be clear. But we will discuss, when we get the update, we'll discuss what input we have to the
and-
process.
and read through the full plan, because
I absolutely,
on the
yeah.
abutter side, there's a 6-foot chain link fence.
Yep.
A foot from there is a 10-foot chain link fence.
Yeah.
And 10 feet from there is another 4-foot chain link fence.
Yes, we are all, hopefully everyone's keeping
Okay.
up. I'm reading all the plans, I'm attending the planning board meetings, and I'm very much aware. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I think I saw someone else get up.
Yeah.
Yep, Steve.
It's Steve Legal, 26 Hemlock Street. We've lived there for in excess of 30 years, and it's always been a playing field. We have no problems with that. They put in lights on the football field. We had no problems with that. Unfortunately, the plans have affected our life, our property, our backyard is now a shower of light. And between us, talking, we've been told that the fence that we have now would stay, and that's, according to the plans, not going to be the case. We were told that the gates we have would stand, and apparently that's not going to be the case. The plans are what they are, and approval is going to be of those plans, I understand. And you've just said that the planning board is in the process of approving those plans.
Well, sorry, they're in the process of
Reviewing them,
doing
but-
their review. I have no idea
Okay,
what
but-
they're.
but you did say.
Sorry, thank you then, I misspoke. I
Okay.
meant they're in the process of reviewing the plan, please, let's be clear. I'm in no way
Okay,
saying that
all
they're
right.
approving anything. I have no idea what their deliberations are.
Very good.
Sorry.
Like I say, it's been a playing field. We accept it as a playing field. We just get the impression that it is being shoehorned into the neighborhood, and it is more or less, my wife asked me to say this, putting 5 pounds of sugar in a 3-pound bag, and it really does not belong there. And that's my opinion, and I'll let it go there. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Driscoll, 56 Meadow Lane. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I think that most of the people, if not all of the people who have spoken so far on this project have been abutters, and I have great sympathy for their concerns, and I wanted to share that the concerns go beyond just those of the abutters. I am on the other side of Mass Ave from this project, and I wanted to let people think a little bit about the fact that this is going to affect more of the neighborhood than just the abutters. For example, I'd like to echo everything that they said, but of course won't take the time. But a point that hasn't been brought up yet is the traffic. And I think that has to do with the use of the field in terms of the lighting issue and how late things are going to be happening on the fields, as well as who's going to be using those fields, and perhaps the temptation to use this as a money-making opportunity for the town by inviting people from surrounding communities to come in and use these fields. I can tell you that we have a lot of traffic problems already in that neighborhood. When I am pulling out of my street and trying to make a left turn on Mass Ave at 4 o'clock, which I do regularly to bring my kids to activities, I sometimes wait 3 or 4 minutes for an opportunity to make that turn. And this is after Atkinson and the kindergarten has been dismissed already, so it's not due to busing or pickup from school. So I'm envisioning what this traffic problem is going to be like if we add the scope that it seems is going to be added in terms of the number of people using this field, and if that's going to continue late into the evening. I think I speak for many people when I say that when this project was introduced, people thought of it as green space, people thought of it as playing fields, a park. Those are the kinds of things that I feel enhance our community. I think that, as some people have said already, the scope of this has grown so much to the point where we're actually looking at perhaps creating some detriments to our community by trying to make this the end-all and be-all of all recreation centers by putting as much as we can cram into one area. And I think that the implications of the impact of our community go beyond the abutters to everybody in the community in this part of town. Thank you very much.
Do we have any more public comments?
Hi, everyone. Lee Blumel, 54 Brad Street Road. I just wanted to put out the question of what's the urgency behind this project. And there was an article in the Eagle Tribune, February 25th, about this $8.75 million project going ahead, construction starting this spring. And I feel like we're hearing from a lot of community members who have real concerns. This is going to be such a huge impact on these families. I mean, the other night there was a couple, and she's pregnant, and they're going to have to try to have a baby with lights in their backyard from a field and noise until maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I've heard the argument that, well, some people have to sacrifice for the benefit of the many, but these families are already going to be sacrificing a lot. They're going to have more traffic, they're going to have more noise, they're going to have, they're going to have a lot of people right in their backyard as it is. And I think, everyone's excited about the project conceptually and green space, but why is there such urgency and no consideration of going back to the consultants or whoever's planning this and saying, we would like you to create a second plan that has one field with turf and lights near the middle school and other fields that are grass without the big lights that are available dusk till dawn till dusk, which is pretty long in the summertime. It's a lot of hours. And I know that costs money, but this project we're talking $8.75 million. If we don't need 2 catchment basins for all the water runoff, that's going to save us some money. If we don't need all those lights around the whole area, that's going to save us some money. It's also going to save us an electricity cost going forward. We are a green community. We have to reduce the electric usage of this town 20% in 5 years. Adding all these big lights isn't going to help us do that. I don't know what the offset plan is to make sure we do make that goal of reducing our electric usage by 20%, but this isn't going to help for sure. I think if more people in town had any idea of what these folks' backyards was going to look like, they would be neighborly enough to say, you know what? When we were planning these fields, the field committee, my kids do group sports, and we're so excited about turf and having all these fields, but we don't need it that badly that they need these huge lights and turf right in their backyards. I don't understand the urgency. I would ask, I don't know exactly what power you have, perhaps just merely in conversation to float the idea of setting back and saying, you know what, we'd just like to see an alternate plan. We're going to slow this down a little bit. And believe me, I know how frustrating that is. When we did a project at the church where I serve, we got all the way from Plan A to Plan L before we could get approval of this plan. And it was within our finances. And we said, L is going to be the plan because we're going to love it. So we had A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We had all the way to L before we, as a community, said, you know what, this works for everybody. And I think this is just a situation where we have to take a look at this and what works for everybody in our community. Thank you.
One more public comment, okay.
All I need is a minute.
Great.
Steve Fosha, 50 Parker Street. I would just like to quote the two consultants that were at the planning board meetings many times, and I've been to many of these meetings, and I quote these two consultants. The 90-foot poles with the lights on them, you will not see the light. The amphitheater with the custom wall speakers, the neighbors will not hear the speakers. They won't hear the noise. They're going to raise the fields with drainage 2 feet, but the neighbors will not be impacted on any drainage. So we got lights that the neighbors can't see. We get speakers that the neighbors can't hear. We get runoff that's not going to happen. We get parking that's not going to happen. We get noise that's not going to happen. You got an $8 million project. I think they ought to shovel that into the public works and clean the town up before we worry about the children. And one last point. Oh, yes, the children. No one's mentioned the children. This is for the children, that's right. It's for the children. One last point. What are we going to do with the illustrious fireworks that are going to drop hot embers on your AstroTurf, huh? I live at Parker Street. I get hot embers on my lawn with the 4th of July fireworks, and I'm many hundreds of feet away. Now this AstroTurf, we're not going to scorch it. We're not going to burn it. We're not going to have to cut it out and repair it because that's the way it is with the do-gooders. Nothing happens, right? What are you going to do to the AstroTurf? Thank you. 8 million down the drain.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay. We will move out of public comment. Thank you, everyone, for coming to share your thoughts. We will move on to.
Madam Chair, do you think it's appropriate that we move to this report so that the people will be here for that versus dismissing everybody when the
We
report
have
is
a
what
lot of things on the agenda and a lot of people here for other topics.
I'm just saying to move it, not.
No, I know what you're saying. I was going to move some other things as well. Sure, let's do the update on the recreation complex next. Since everyone's here, they can benefit from hearing the update. I will turn it to our Assistant Town Manager, DKC, to give us an overview of where we are with the project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my update is mostly procedural, where the project lies. It's in 4 different categories, where the project stands before the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, an update on the fundraising, and also the webpage. So the Planning Board met, as you heard, on Tuesday, March 5th, and Waterfield made a presentation on the lighting and the construction entrance. And Waterfield and the board heard concerns from the residents, which you have just heard about, alternative ways that could mitigate the lighting impact on the neighbors. Some suggestions that were brought up were lowering the heights of the walkway poles, adding more natural buffers, and screening to reduce the light spillage into the neighborhoods. There was a discussion regarding the construction entrance for the construction vehicles. Waterfield took feedback from the school department that will be incorporated into the draft notice. The board has asked the planning director to prepare the draft decision, and that will be discussed at the next planning board meeting on March 19th. So procedurally, that's where everything stands with the planning board. With the Conservation Commission, they have a meeting on Wednesday. This project is also on the agenda. Horsley Witten has reviewed the stormwater management and the permitting plans, and Waterfield has provided satisfactory responses to the questions posed by the peer reviewer. The Conservation Administrator is also reviewing the planting plan. There's a draft order of conditions, and the Commission will likely close their hearing, probably following the final plan approval by the Planning Board, and the Conservation Commission's following meeting is March 27th. So they're actively discussing the project. Fundraising, the issue of the 501c accounting has been reviewed by legal counsel and the Joseph N. Herman Foundation. Rick Green shared a legal opinion with the Herman Center Board last week, and the establishment of the fundraising account was brought to the board by a vote, and it was approved subject to some conditions that Rick will work out with the accountant as well as their legal representation. The webpage. The town is creating a micro website for the community to remain up to date on the status of the project. So the site will include diagrams, links to meeting minutes, a calendar of upcoming meetings, the construction timeframe, frequently asked questions, and a form that citizens can complete with questions they may have for staff. And I will continue to provide the board with updates on the process.
On the point about the turf, I know that there was an action from the planning board to connect with the Board of Health. So just to, maybe you said that and I missed it, but just to let everyone know, that is an action that's also in flight, is the planning board connecting with the Board of Health to discuss the turf assessment, this decision of the turf.
Yeah, I don't have a determination as to what that was.
Just to let them know, that's in process. We don't have a determination. And I mean, I did ask Rick Green and those of the Middle School Fields Committee project that were involved all along to attend our meeting in case this group had questions that we might want answered. I went to the planning board meeting, so I feel like I'm understanding where we are in the process. I mean, the planning board, as Dee said, is deliberating. They're still in an open public hearing.
Miss, real quick, my only concern when I spoke was literally on, not limiting to anything. Could we just really,
I'm sorry. We're kind of out of public comment, and this is no longer appropriate. I think we got a good sense of what everybody feels here. I think that's clear. So I guess I'll ask the board if you have any questions specifically for Rick and team regarding the project.
I think Rick heard some of the questions and comments. Is this something you want to address or address in a meeting and then get back to people? Or I don't want to put you on the spot if you're not prepared either. Okay.
357 Ray Street, Chair of the Fields Committee. Where would you like to start?
Obviously already there. And I know that we don't use the field the same way that we did 15 years ago. But
yes.
So you've been really good, the chair, in communicating what the site visits produced, and that, Merrimack. Obviously, we don't want a Merrimack College right in the middle of that neighborhood. But how do the lights that you're proposing compare to the lights that are there right now?
Site visit to Merrimack was ill-advised, in my opinion, because it differs in a lot of ways.
So I'm actually not terribly familiar with Greater Lawrence. I meant the lights that are there. There are already light posts there right now.
There are lights there now at Hayes Stadium, and I believe those are 60-foot tall. The ones that would be near the abutters are 4 60-foot light poles. Obviously, they're not in the same position as those at Hayes Stadium right now, but they would be 60-foot high.
So the same height as that are
Same height, but
Same height, but the new ones are directional.
The new ones are directional, yes.
Since I was at the meeting, I asked the same
No,
question.
that's
They're directed down towards the field, and they're set at the factory by, in the case of the designer, it's Musco lighting. So those lights are purposely positioned to show light on the field. Unlike Merrimack's lighting had specific lights that were directed towards the sidewalk, the parking area, the end zones, because there's a track there. Also on the side where the bleachers were, there's wall pack lighting, which obviously on a college campus, the goal is to provide safety and security, so you'd want a well-lit campus. If you went to Greater Lawrence, granted, there is, a vacant field that will be under construction, I think is Phase 2. It's directional lighting. It's a lot different than Merrimack's. Unfortunately, in the case of this project, most of the abutters who came to see the lighting went to see Merrimack's lighting. As we mentioned, Kim Reardon was the only abutter who came to Greater Lawrence. So there was a significant difference.
Is the Merrimack lighting also 60 feet?
I believe that is 60 feet, yes. Actually, no, I think it's 80. It's 80. And Greater Lawrence, I think, has 3 60-foot poles and 1 70-foot pole.
One thing that was discussed at the planning board meeting, which they were saying they didn't feel that they were in a position to put in their decision, was the hours that the lights would be on, that wasn't their purview. So I think we as a board could set the hours of operation, and I think, at least from talking with the Fields Committee, what they feel like was said in various meetings, and I didn't get the meeting minutes and whatnot, but what I think they would be happy with is to say that the lights would go off at the softball field at 9 o'clock and the upper field at 10 o'clock, except for in an exception basis. So we could, as a board, set hours such as that or some other. At least that's one thing I think that we could do in terms of what's our responsibility.
Just for, this sounds like a silly thing, but I know that we're supposed to be leveling the fields. When you say the upper field, are you talking about the field closer to the Hemlock Street? This
The
field
one
right here?
closest to the middle school is
Okay.
the one that's got the taller lights and what they would like to see on longer,
Okay.
which is further away from the abutters, obviously. The ones on the softball field on the top of the map, if you're ever looking at on the website, or you can find the map on our town website, the ones closest to Parker Street are the ones that have 60-foot lights, 4 60-foot lights, softball field.
Ma'am, I know I'm not supposed to talk, but how many lights are we talking about? Will we all be on at the same time?
Sorry, this is, really, this is not a forum for this. This is a forum for the, for the planning board. I mean,
I'd like to hear the answer to that, but this is a good opportunity. I know that you guys have had, and by you guys, I mean the committee, the several dozen residents that have been involved. I think 36 meetings, 37 meetings that you've had. And so for residents that did have questions that wanted to dive deeper, outside of a planning board meeting, are there more meetings planned, or?
We haven't had any meetings. The last meeting was, I think, in October of 2018. And the reason why the meetings had ended is because we had gathered all the information from the different groups, and we went into final design.
If I could speak to that, Terry Holland, 133 Green Street. The only groups we met with were from high school or youth. We've never met with an adult group or looked for concerns outside of our school-age kids. Right now, that's all that uses the field, and that I see, that's all that's going to use the field. So in the early spring, you're going to run into baseball and softball because it gets dark so early that the kids have to cut the game short. That's why we wanted to go with the lights. The other reason for that is a lot of parents don't get to see their kids play. They just can't get home in time. So we like to have everybody have a chance for a night game so that the parents can watch their kids play. That was the concern why we were looking for the lights. And then in the fall, football is up there and soccer is up there. Again, we're dealing with the short days. So do it. But keep it in mind, these are school-age kids. They're not going to be out late at night. Nobody's playing late because everybody has to get up the next day and go to school. So we never scheduled, that a game would go to a late hour. I'm just letting you know that. Thanks.
I think that you raise a good point. I just want to clarify. The fields, the lit fields are what we're saying is only going to be used by kids. Obviously, the rec complex overall will be used by all ages. But
It was not the
you bring up
intent.
a point that it's not the intent of the town to lease out these fields for adult league, play.
That is correct.
And I think that's another thing that this board can
And that is-
commit to.
That has been a question and a concern of the neighbors, thinking that in in order to raise revenue, that we would be leasing it out to private organizations, and it was news to me. I'm like, I mean, I imagine if there was a special, certain kind of an event, that there's maybe the possibility of that, but I don't.
But through a special permit process, please, no questions from, this is, I want to.
Yeah, just to echo that, there was no intent to rent out the fields to like men's leagues or women's leagues like that. It was for in-town
Right.
programs.
And even, because we can say that as a board, but the point was made that there'll be a time where we all leave, and a lot of these people will still own homes there. But even in those situations, if somebody wanted to ever rent it out 10, 15, 20 years down the road, abutters have to be notified, just like they're notified about the planning board process. They'd have to come to the select board meeting. That select board would have to vote to approve or not approve. So it's not something that could ever just happen in the dark of the night.
And that's correct.
And that's not saying that's our intent, but it's really, we're not going to be here 20 years from now.
Correct, and I think part of the establishment of a committee to oversee the facility, I'm assuming, not to jump out of line, but there would be some conditions set on how that committee would have to serve. They wouldn't, yes, they wouldn't just have a carte blanche to make decisions.
Similar to what we've had at the Stevens Estate.
Correct.
Does have to be cleared through town council, but I think if we're putting our name and our word on something, it would be very nice to have it in writing as well, so.
I think that's probably the only safest way it could operate.
So we'll take an action to talk to town council about what sort of
Protective
covenant we can put in place for this. Okay. Any other questions?
Hey, Madam Chair, I would suggest that you also include in there the sound, right? We can also regulate when we can start using the speakers in the morning and when we can, when they need to stop at night. So that's in addition to the lights and the uses, I would include the sound as well.
Oh, the sound. Okay. Yeah.
I think the one thing, the question about the AstroTurf, I think if we do find that it's harmful, it's a whole other discussion. Nobody, I know the people on the committee, I know many of the people in this room, nobody wants a carcinogen under the feet or people laying down. We just don't. So we have to find an answer for that. With real statistics, though. We need to have good common sense science and on that, too. Frankly, everything's a carcinogen in excess. Everything is. But I don't think that there's anybody at this table or anybody in the audience that wants to build something that is a known carcinogen. So we'll have to.
I think we'll certainly hear back from our Board of Health.
Yeah.
Department of Public Health on that matter. Okay.
I'm not familiar enough with turf maintenance, but a good point was made. We talked before about the whole idea of whether or not we'd be able to maintain fireworks there. And we talked about using, if you're looking at an aerial map where Hemlock Street sits at the top of the page, we talked about using the expanded parking lot for potentially where fireworks happen. But I don't know, how does, I assume people must.
We actually met with the pyrotechnics company, Matt Shea, who is in charge of the firework display in North Andover.
Mm-hmm.
He actually mapped out a radius of the impact of the fireworks. I think it was a 300-foot. That's been incorporated and taken into consideration by the design consultant. One of the things that he said towns generally do is they wet the turf down before the fireworks, and that's been sufficient. He also said that, I don't want to get into technical terms of pyrotechnics, but he also can change the way the fireworks are lit off. It's nothing that the public would see or notice in the actual display, but it's the intensity of the fireworks that go off. So we actually met with him early in the stages because we knew this was a concern to maintain the fireworks in that location. So he has addressed that, and Waterfield has that information. They have the meeting minutes from that meeting with him.
And I think he met with the chief and he was comfortable with it. Right?
Yeah.
He came out to the site and actually planned, because we were concerned about that right from the beginning, because that's a really important part of what we offer our citizens at the 4th of July, particularly those who don't always have the money to go away. This is their vacation, is 4th of July and the fun events that the festival committee puts on. So, yeah, they came right out, and he very specifically said, yes, we can do this, and outlined it, so.
Yes, and then there's still the fireworks if it goes into the season of construction. If you notice, the consultant has actually shifted the construction staging area, and that is to allow fireworks to be held during construction. So that language will be written into the contract documents.
Is the damage, even when you wet it, damage is minimal, or there's not,
Minimal.
it just doesn't get damaged in that way?
Again, they can control the intensity of the fireworks so that it does not, I don't want to say shower, embers down on the turf in such a way as it does now. Again,
I don't know enough about fireworks, but I hope we're not
I don't
showering
wanna
embers
speak-
down
I don't
on
wanna speak
our middle school though either,
technicalities
because
either,
it's regardless, there are cars there are school buildings there are neighborhoods there. We heard from one neighbor who has this falling on their home. And so I would hope that it's not flaming debris that's falling on people's homes. So if you were looking at the map, I've always understood it as the intent for putting turf was going to be where there was lighter green, and the darker green was going to be the natural grass, and I mean,
There's two, there's the main field, which you can see probably striped. in
yeah, well,
white.
there was, I guess, the upper and the lower fields.
Does he- Well, we call them upper, I guess you call them upper lower, but one of them's really the field closest to the abutters in the main field, which is closer to Route 125.
But there is.
They're
But
all
am I-
turf. Both fields are proposed
light
as
is
turf.
So, okay, but the dark is gonna be the natural, and you're in the plan, okay.
And I know someone made there was a public comment about picnic areas and so forth. There are picnic areas proposed throughout the facility, as well as shade trees. There's also a pavilion planned will have picnic tables.
So there is space to lay around on grass without
Yes.
laying on the turf.
I got it. I think.
Any other questions for?
I think the only other statement that I would make is that this isn't a room of us versus them. And so I know there are a lot of neighbors in here. Maybe you don't know all of us, but
We're
I
all
mean,
neighbors.
Yeah,
Except
literally,
for
like
Chris.
I've had, a
And
neighbor
Vicky,
across the
who's
street
a
from me
little
speak
further.
tonight. I mean, this is not people from one section of town saying, let's shoehorn this into another section. I mean, three of us literally live right there, as well as does Mr. Holland. You live closer, I think, than some of the speakers tonight. So, so I think we all want to see this work for our neighborhood, because again, I know there was a reference made, this really is our neighborhood, quite literally. It's where we all live, just by coincidence. So, I appreciate the patience of the residents in this room, because I know it can be tough with an open meeting. We run into this actually quite often, where just structurally we can't allow that open debate. So thank you for your patience. Thank you. And thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick, for
Thank
coming
you
out
guys
again.
for coming. We had a couple other items I wanted to take out of order
Do you want to approve the minutes first?
to try and move things along. Sure, we can approve the minutes first.
Madam Chair, motion to approve the February 21st open session meeting minutes as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, also motion to approve the February 25th open session minutes as written.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, I'll wait for these folks to filter out, and then we'll move. Okay.
90-second recess will clear us out.
A what?
90-second recess.
Yeah,
will
90-second recess, exactly. I was going to move the MRI guys next, but I can do the branding instead. If they don't come in, then they lose their next up spot. Who? Yeah, I know. Sorry. We have a lot of people here for stuff tonight. All right, we'll move senior center to later, since no one's here for that. But then I guess, maybe we'll just go in order.
Let's go in order.
Chuck's here. We'll have Chuck up next. Thank you, Chief. We'll just go. Oh, sorry, Rosemary stepped out. I forgot. So let's give her. You are. You're here for the traffic study. Sorry. Yo, you thought there was excitement over a traffic study. What's this? Oh.
Yep.
Well,
We're just moving on with the traffic study, Rosemary, so I've asked Chief Gray to join us. So this, thank you, Chief, for coming. This was prompted by me, actually, and in a budget review, noticing a great accomplishment that you had noted, which was to the traffic study that you guys did, looking at monitoring traffic on various streets, which we had all requested, I think, because of public comments to us about speeding and whatnot. So I appreciate that you did that. Wanted to get an update from you as to the results.
Ongoing study. I gave you the cover page, which basically said we're doing this. We found some traffic boxes at the Mass Chief Show last year. We purchased a couple. It gives us some really good data as far as number of vehicles, type of vehicles, and speeds, percentiles. We take Mass Ave, for example. You start at the bottom of Mass Ave, you have about 60-something thousand vehicles in a week. As you get closer to the Textile Museum, you're seeing less and less. You're seeing about 40,000. You can see where, as people are coming into town, they're branching off. You're seeing the speeds that are really close to what the speed limit is, and we talked about this before. When doing speed enforcement, you can't write someone for going 1 mile over the limit. Yes, it says strictly enforced, but it's more like the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law. So if you go to Lawrence District Court on a hearing and you're writing a ticket for someone doing 31 and a 30, as you can see some of these average speeds are, the clerks really aren't going to be too happy about that. So we do try to, hit the anomalies, the ones that are really, above and beyond, and basically the ones that are asking to get a ticket by their actions in driving. Really happy with the speeds we're seeing. The averages are really close. One thing we noticed, like for example on Bradford Street, we get a lot of complaints from the neighbors that are actually Havel residents. They live on the side, on the opposite side by the water tower. And one of the things we notice is, the speeds are coming up there, coming down that hill. And, they're still 10 miles over the limit, but it's still something we can get a cruiser out there and try to enforce. We talked about West Brad Street and Green when they had that really bad motor vehicle crash. And we had people calling the station wanting airport grade stop signs and stoplights, to get put up immediately. And we did the study, and you find the speeds are actually at or below average, or what it should be for the speed limit, And so all in all, we're just going to keep documenting, get a library going. We have 30 so far. We try to get them when the streets are being used normally, and by that I mean we try not to get it during a blizzard. We try not to get it during Christmas week. We try not to get it during 4th of July week when there's a lot of people away, because we want to get a really accurate number of what we're looking at. We did Cypress Terrace, which is the Franklin School. There was complaints about that. You notice there was a speeder right there at 40 miles an hour at 7:40 in the morning on that street. Obviously, someone late for school, teacher or student or whatever. But again, something like that was the lone speeder that we did have during school hours. But for the most part, the speeding ones that you see out there are not a rogue speeder, but a cruiser probably on its way to an emergency call. So we kind of, take that under advisement when we look at the speeds. But for the most part, it's working out really well. It's answering a lot of questions. It's giving people some data. They've requested it through the public records request, and obviously this is posted online now, so anyone that wants to look at it for their streets. If you have a suggestion as to what street you need to be, monitored next, I'm open to suggestions. We're trying to hit the commuting routes. As you can see from the times, you hit Johnson Street, Salem Street, that's going to be coming up. We tried to hit the downtown streets, the one where we had bad crashes, and the ones we had a lot of complaints at. So overall, it's working out really well, and we're going to keep building that library.
What was the last thing you said?
We're going to keep building the library. We're going to have a library of every street in town, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the goal. It's going to take a while, but again, it's given the nature of, when we can get the study done, nice weather and non-vacation blizzards times, it's true and accurate as best of our ability.
So, Chief, this was sort of fun data to kind of chew through on a snowy day, right?
Yeah.
And so what was fascinating to me was the percentage over the speed limit and the average speeder. When you look at streets, there were
Which one are you looking at? You looking at in particular? Or?
Just in general, the format of it,
Yep.
right? And then what happens is you start to look at it, to me, so I sort of said, okay, well, what streets where the percent of drivers were over the speed limit or over the 85 percentile, and a number of streets stand out, and then also the other exposure is sort of what the average speed of the speeder is, that there were some that were sort of at the higher end. And so, to your point, you could see some trends, and so I was thinking about how do we use, how do the citizens use this, and how can you kind of convey this message?
I'll tell you how we use it is when people call and say that they're speeding on Mass Ave. Well, we're going to look at the time, like when the speeds are happening, when the highest speed is recorded, when the peak times are, and you find that the more commuting routes, instead of having an officer out there running radar at 11 o'clock in the morning when the commute's already done, we're going to put them at the morning or afternoon commute to try to focus on that area of travel where we're hitting those speeds.
Right.
And as a citizen, you're looking at your street and you're saying, okay, you know, the speed is at 11 o'clock at night is someone doing 50 miles an hour in a 30. It's either a cruiser or one of your neighbors. And that's usually one of our biggest problems we deal with is we have a lot of people that complain about speed, and we get it. But the worst thing as a police officer, the absolute worst thing is knowing someone's complaining about speed in this part of town and catching them in this part of town when they're speeding. And it's kind of like, you know, don't tell me you're concerned about speeding when it's okay to speed in this people's neighborhood, but not yours.
Yeah.
So that's what we like to say is here's the data, you know.
So, and this is maybe kind of a maybe a little project. You know, Chris McClure doesn't have enough to do.
Right.
But you know, I look at this and I wonder whether or not there's, in my head, I see this heat map that we could potentially overlay on the town. What a great way to potentially illustrate to folks. And again, I'm a little spitballing here, but the concept here is to help drive home to people visually, okay, where folks tend to speed, to kind of make people aware of that, and that might be more of a public service opportunity for us.
Yep.
And again, as I see here, you know, there are just some that jump out, and to me, that might be a really neat way to help drive that home to folks, that it's not just my neighborhood, it's other neighborhoods in town.
I like the idea just to show people that the speeds are actually really good. If you look at a lot of these streets, they're really good. And you also have to consider, too, that this is a dynamic situation because right now you have that construction on 495 overpass, the double-decker bridge. So it's forcing traffic to go up Sutton Street, down 125 northbound to get to the connector. So we're seeing an increase in traffic on Sutton Street and 125. And when that construction's done, that's going to hopefully disappear. So again, it's going to be a constant, you know, evaluation of what's going on in town. When this construction happens for the project at the middle school, that's going to throw things into a, you know, into a different mix, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with that.
I agree with you, though. It could be really, when I saw this, I was like, ooh, I wish this was an Excel so I could.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
But,
Get a little hands-on.
yes.
Yeah.
So
But this is great.
You can use this for resource allocation.
Exactly.
And it was tough for me. I mean, you comb through the 55 pages, and I didn't see any area where, like, for us, the last time we dealt with a traffic issue where we needed to take action was the three-way kind of awkward stop sign at like High Street and Elm Street. It doesn't appear that there's actually an action item for us. There's no speeding signs that need to be either
I'm just
reduced
giving
or
you an
increased
update. No, I think there's no action item at all because right now it's ongoing, but it's working really well, and I'm giving you the data so you can see for yourself that it's providing some really good information. People are requesting it. We're giving it to them. Like I said, it's online now, so anyone can look at this right now, and you know, if there's streets that need to be addressed, we'll be happy to put the boxes up there on a you know, a need basis.
But of the ones that you did address, which I think cover the town geographically really well.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to see that there wasn't one that, oh wow, that's a place that we neglected. We should probably make a change there. So that was my surprise. Were there any data points in this, either on specific intersections or just overall that?
I just like even Mass Ave. You see people get off the highway, and as they go closer to the old center, they're branching off more and more. So that it's clearly a huge reduction in vehicles from starting at the bottom of Mass Ave to the time you get to the top of Mass Ave, and stuff like that. So it just lets us know that, you know, the traffic's going somewhere. It's going into the residential areas, going 125 either way, Waverly. So it's telling us, you know, enforcement, if we're going to be, you know, hitting those areas at the time, we want to hit the most number of vehicles sometimes, or we're going to hit the areas where the speeds are up a little bit. I mean, it's like I said, dynamic.
Oh, that's an interesting. That goes back to having an Excel spreadsheet would have been good, because that's an interesting observation that I didn't catch, but that's neat to know, especially given the context of the discussion earlier tonight, actually, about just traffic in general over in that neighborhood, because that's.
I mean, like West Brad Street and Green was the biggest one, because that was like, I remember when that whole accident happened, people were asking for like stop signs, stop lights, helicopter patrols, and it was an anomaly. It was just a bad accident that happened that day. The speeds are normal, and they're below normal at some points. It happens.
So you're saying when it has like max speed of 90, you think that's a cruiser going to?
I'd be willing to put money down. It's a cruiser. Yeah.
If not, what needs to be there?
If not one needs, but I mean, we can't say for sure, but it's you know, that's not unlikely for cruisers to be going to a hot call. They're going to be going that fast in certain areas.
But when I see it, you know, when I see that 90% of the drivers are over the speed limit and the average speed is 39 miles an hour, that to me says, that so there are a couple of data points that jump out like that. And again, I think for resource allocation, and I guess also information for,
Is that Bradford Street you're looking at?
it's, where is it? It's Tower to Bradford.
Yeah, that's the Bradford Street one. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And again, it's looking at 9 miles over the speed limit, because it's 30. And again, it goes to traffic enforcement and what we can get away with in court, and what we don't want to be throwing at clerks to, you know, to say it's not going to stick. The last thing we want to do with the insurance industry, everyone's getting surcharges. They're going to fight the ticket no matter what. So every time they get a ticket, whether they deserve it or not, it's going to court. We're dealing with the hearings, and it's, you know, it impacts.
Well, you as the officer doing the pulling over, you have to go and actually be at court. So for 1 mile, I mean, that just.
Yeah, I mean, you go into court, and I'm not going to do the whole process, but there's a hearing, and then if the hearing doesn't happen, it goes to a judge's hearing, and it's another hearing for the officer to go to and stuff like that. So it's.
So to time up for 1 mile.
Right. Yeah, like I said, it's the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law.
This is great, though, I think, for the public to, I'm really happy we had you come in, because I think this is great for people to realize when they call up one of us or you guys and say, oh, they're speeding on my street, that we have the data, we're looking at the data, we're putting cruisers where it makes sense to try and catch people based on the data, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I'm
some,
really happy
like
to have this.
Selectman Nobile said, you know, they said 90% of the people are speeding. Well, the speed limit's 30, and they're doing 33.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
Got to make account for a couple of slight downgrades where you pick up anyway, so I
Right.
suppose we've got to be braking the whole way.
Right, right.
The thing on Bradford Street is really amazing to me because that's pretty hilly. That's kind of, it's not like straight and flat. That how fast, and it's not that wide, so, boy.
I think it's more, people have been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And now there's houses up there. I mean, I'd be concerned if I lived there too. But again, there's a police officer who lives in that neighborhood, and he's got a cruiser in his driveway, and they still go by it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on
No,
the
great.
traffic?
Thanks.
Thank
No
you,
problem.
Chief.
Nice job.
Yeah, really, really great information. Thanks for coming. Sorry for the long.
No worries.
wait.
What's that?
Okay, so the next item on our agenda, I guess since we have so many people who are waiting, I don't know if we want to, let's just take the business branding item since we'll wrap up this
Thank you. I'd like to
section.
invite Lauren Burke, who is from Cashman Cass, who is the town consultant on this matter, and Jean Enright, our planning director and assistant director of community and economic development. And so just as a brief reminder to the board, the town received a grant from the Merrimack Valley Municipal Relief Fund of a little over $67,000 to do this branding campaign. And Cashman Cass, along with Octagon Strategies, the town used them previously to do the Amazon HQ2 video that was done with the surrounding communities. And so we'd like to present to you the initial branding idea for the board's consideration, the cast here. And hold on.
Can you see the screen, Dick?
Kind of a little bit light, but we'll get there.
Okay. It's just, for some reason, it's saying no device found. I don't know why. I'm doing CAS, yeah. What? What does this do? That one just went out. Sorry for the delay here. What's that? Does it give you rooms to pick up? No. It's not like picking that device up. I can get a copy of a hard copy. Lauren's got a hard copy, but. Just try one more thing. Let me just try one more thing, sorry.
While you're waiting, Dick, what do you see when you look out? Did you hear?
Yes, you're right, sorry. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like we go through this debate every year that we could probably make
We
this quicker
do,
for him.
you're right, since this is relatively quick, we can move while they're trying to figure that out to Stevens Pond update and 2019 fees.
Okay, thank you. Annual trip to the board to set the fees for Stevens Pond 2019. Real quick, just want to highlight a few things. In the last 3 years, we've only had to close the pond one half of one day, which says a lot to the town's commitment on water quality. We are in, since the blue-green algae issue of 7 years ago, we've done a great job of maintaining. Maintenance program is put in place in May and follows throughout the whole season. Also, the water quality has had us much improvement in the E. coli, which had usually in previous years had us closed at least 2 to 3 days during the summer. So I can't thank the town enough, as well as DPW and the water treatment plant for the work that they've done on that aspect. Last year we did our weed removal. We're on an every other year schedule for the weed removal. So this year we will not have the weed removal. But it was really great last year. We are also in this, as you saw in the pretty much the rundown of everything. Each year we've talked to you about the increases of things that we've done. And last year, I'm happy to say, we had new beach sand. We did the new weed removal. Thank you to a grant from the Joseph Henn Youth Center, Inc. We got new safety ropes, first time in 45 years, a new log roll, and we started our new canoe rental program, which we will be expanding this year to canoes and kayaks. The kayaks actually didn't come in until the season was mostly over. We also had a new gate attendant structure and a new canoe kayak rack. You guys honored the Eagle Scouts for doing that. So we will continue to do things every year. Rosemary knows very clearly what bad shape the pond was in about 10 years ago, and the town made a commitment to obviously build a bathhouse and all the things that I've just mentioned. So we're excited for this year. Kelly Ray, who's been our longtime director, will be coming back for her 8th year. And Mary Lacey will be returning as our assistant for the 2nd year. We'll continue to work with Department of Public Works in terms of, as I said, the water quality, but they're also involved with raking the sand, cutting the grass all during the season, and the bushes, and Jim's group does a great job on that. We once again will be having our swimming lessons, which is the best deal in the Commonwealth, the way I see it, in terms of what we actually charge for kids to learn how to swim down there, which is great. And the hours of operation, we had a late start last year due to the fact that we had a late closure of school with the weather. So we're feeling pretty good with only really one snow day that will be opening. We're ambitiously open. It will be open June 24th and will continue to be open till August 23rd. The fee recommendation is what you guys set every year. And just to be clear, we either have a level funded charging what we've charged last year. I have been charged by the town manager each year to propose a fee that would make this totally self-sufficient. With that said, because I'm preparing for Rosemary's questions, we have closed the gap each year. If you notice on the numbers on the last page of how much we brought in, last year we brought in $33,633, spent $36,592 for only a loss of $2,959. And if you look at the numbers, that's substantially less each year that we've done. With that said, I'm sorry, it was $35,448 last year. We spent $38,098 for a deficit of $2,650, which is the lowest we've had in the last close to 8 or 9 years. We are planning, working very closely with Lynn Savage. We're in a 3-year plan with the Youth and Recreation Department to come up to minimum wage requirements. This is our last year we'll be doing that, so we have to factor that in also. As you know, minimum wage has gone up, so for all of our lifeguards, gate attendants, that has to be factored in that. So our fees have been last year $75 for a season car pass. I am proposing an increase of $15 to $90. The proposed estimate numbers is 240 quantity of the season car passes. Swimming lessons has been, as I said, I think it's the steal. It's $50. And I'm proposing go up $25 to $75, and the hope is we're averaging around 110 swimming lessons. Daily adult passes, it was $13 last year, raised by you guys $1. So I'm proposing that stays at $13. The season pass for nonprofit, we only have one that actually comes every year. I was proposing $150 to $175 on that. And we have one for-profit group that is our child care center on 114 that actually uses it. I'm proposing that goes from $250 to $275. We only have one of those. Additional sticker, it's $20. I'm proposing a $5 increase. We had 60 additional stickers. Just so you know, a lot of families buy additional stickers for a nanny or someone else, or a second car that maybe the husband's driving, not just the wife. So we do have 60 people bought that. And we've always been able to meet our needs with our senior citizens, and we have a reduced rate of $35. I'm not asking for any increase on that. As always, it's the board that will decide. Again, keep in mind, I level funded versus the request from previous town managers, as well as Andrew Mailer, to basically present to you something that could make this a very level funded program.
What's the you said the for-profit. What's the nonprofit?
It is Edgewood. Sorry.
So did you calculate the raises in that 2,650 deficit?
No. That deficit was last year's deficit.
Okay, so if we...
So if you look at the numbers of what I'm proposing, I'm estimating revenue of 37, which would get us to the closest we've been last year. Obviously, we spent 38, so it would get us almost close to what we're factoring on that.
And so that includes the raises?
Correct.
When you did that way, okay.
Oh, last year,
Every-
so 38,000 included raises.
Right, because we're in a 3-year plan to raise minimum wage.
Yeah, you did say that.
So will they be raised again if you're doing it over a 3-year
There's,
period?
we haven't got, so we're raising this year, Lynn. We're hoping that it's not immediate, but there is talk that there'll be another increase. I think they're hoping to get to $15. But is it by next year? Yeah. So Lynn has been really great in terms of letting us know that, and we plan ahead for that. But this would be for this year.
So why, which was a good reason to do that, you don't want a sharp increase, because people will have literally sticker shock, no pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, the 50 to 75 is going up, obviously 50% on it. I do think if you were to pay, and we've had this conversation before, but if you were to pay for swimming lessons at the Y, you'd be paying a lot more than $50 or $75. And I understand what we're trying to do as a community, but I'm just trying to lay that out.
I appreciate it. Every year you do a really good job of showing us what it could be without advocating one way, but this is the first year. So kayak rentals, you said, we'll end up having this year. Do you have?
Yeah, so I was a little disappointed with and maybe it was the first year, and maybe it was the canoes, not the kayaks. We actually feel we actually polled our residents that were down there, and they're more pumped about the kayaks than the canoes. Right. So I met with Andrew at the end of the year, and we kind of looked at it and were like, wow, not the greatest numbers that we were hoping for. I don't know if we had an idea. Lori was actually the one that had originally given us the idea. In my place up north, it's a very big lucrative piece for their pond up there, and I think we're going to get it. I don't think we're going to have major money on it, but I think you can make some money off of that.
And like how much? Because I mean, we did have a really successful year last year. It was actually, don't sell yourself short. It was that you list 15 years, 16 years on here, and it's the best year we've had.
Correct.
In every year that you've listed, going back to 2002.
Correct.
So between that and then the cutting of the cost, because we're only doing every other year weed removal,
Yeah, that
not?
doesn't come out of my budget, Judge.
Okay.
Just so you know, weed removal comes out of DPW's budget, as well as all water tests and the blue-green algae maintenance program. So that's not budgeted out of us. It comes out of DPW's. That was factored in their budget.
Oh, okay, okay.
Have you ever considered the paddle boats? You have a place up north, you must know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're just too expensive. but-
They are fairly expensive compared to what the canoes and kayaks were. I think we're trying to see, we did a program with paddle boards down there last year with a company, Supio.
Oh, paddle boards. I was talking
paddle
about
boards.
the.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those are actually fairly expensive. I would want to know if it actually would fly here before we went out and purchased those.
Yeah, I understand.
But
So you are thinking of paddle boards? too?
So it's actually a program we
That's
do
cool.
down there with a North Andover company called Supio. And they actually come down and they, one day a week, offer paddleboard classes to our kids.
That's awesome.
So we're just trying to offer more than we have had down there. And we're trying to get the middle school kids to be more interested. You know, elementary school kids and their parents love Stevens Pond. Middle school kids get bored. So working with Lori, we're going to have a new playground down there next year as part of the town's commitment to, and we're going to look at having we have a very small playground down there, but we have an area we can probably do some more work with. So again, we're just trying to year by year make it something that the residents want to go.
Yeah, and you're doing, and it's great, Rick. I mean, as you said.
And to
we
your point, I mean, a lot of our residents can go away on vacations, but we have a lot of our residents, this is, to be honest with you, this is Hampton Beach to a lot of our residents. And Ray Santillo used to call it South Beach, but I don't think it was as nice as South Beach, but we are trying to make some strides on that.
No, it's really great. Every year, there's another great surprise that we're adding to it, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So with that, I would certainly motion that we keep the rates the same. So,
Second.
to start the discussion.
You are consistent.
Of course, you knew what was going to. Well, again, this is, as you said, it's many families' vacation, but more importantly,
Right.
our kids must learn how to swim. It's short money if we're saving somebody's life, and it's important, so.
Absolutely.
So, a couple things. One, I think the idea with Supyo is really an avenue, and I think it's an avenue to get actually teenagers and adults into, because the opportunity to have competition, and again, Supyo will take you through that. Also, from a health standpoint, you know.
They're having
it's-
a sunset adult group, if you and Regina would like to come down. That's going to be one night a week also.
It's, once people get introduced to it, it's,
Yeah.
Why?
it's really.
Because Rosemary and I burn. We can't be
But I do think that, I think it's an opportunity for us to grow, and I'm glad to see we're engaging with that, and it's a shift, right? Of, you know, canoes used to be the thing, and now it's
Correct.
kayaks and sups, and again, I think you can attract that. So I'm excited for that, but just absolutely agree with all the wonderful things we're doing here, but we are also the body that's looking at finance here. And if I understand it correct, and Lynn, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at expenses next year of hitting over 40,000 for this, is that correct? So we're looking at expenses going up by more than $2,500. And that's just the reality of it. And so, you know, well, it's great job in terms of trying to balance all the pieces with making it appealing to folks and draw folks in. The reality is, you know, we're chasing that gap. And without these proposed fee adjustments, we're going to lose gaining ground on the gap. And I appreciate how you've broken it down here. You know, it's always find another revenue avenue, and then the existing fees don't have to be tagged as much. And so I really appreciate you looking at it that way, because that's the reality of it. When we strip it all down, that's what we're here to make sure it stays viable.
Sorry, where do you see that the next year's expenses are going to be 40,000? Because I'm looking at.
If we have to go up to minimum wage one more time with what so minimum wage, we're in a process where technically we were told as a municipality, seasonal programs, we didn't have to follow. We could follow the federal rules, which kids, or we could be in New Hampshire and pay them $8 an hour. So we've worked out where we were up to $10, $11. This summer, we're paying our minimum wage of $12 an hour. So technically, it's $13 an hour. So next year was our plan to go to 13, which would add another dollar to it. But there is a possibility that it could go higher than that. So to Chris's point, we have to be prepared for that, as well as we're always at the mercy of weather. And that's the other thing, so.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the desire to keep it flat for as long as we can. But I'm looking at increasing costs as well, and the fact that we're doing right by another set of our youth by paying them minimum wage, and wanting to not let this gap go back between revenue and expenses, go back higher than we've done a good job of getting it to a small gap. I mean, before I would agree to just keeping it exactly as 2018, I mean, I'd rather discuss specific line items and say, well, let's keep swimming lessons at $50 because we definitely want every kid to be able to swim no matter, what.
It's a quality of
But,
life issue.
but maybe the car passes, instead of going, maybe instead of going to 90, we go to 80 or 85 or something. But
I think
I'm just being conscious of the fact that we are financial stewards, as you said, and I don't know.
So I did second the motion. I would entertain.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, because I agree. We are fortunate that this is a revenue generator in the sense that it's not costing us $38,000 a year to operate, and that's coming out of our general fund. It's costing us this past year $2,600, and I view it as a recreational opportunity for people in our community who don't have access to. And we talk about this, and it's true. There is a large population of people who live in this town that is an awesome opportunity for them at very little cost. And so I don't have a problem with subsidizing it at this rate. The one exception being if we wanted for the for-profit business, I would have no problem. Granted, I did not make the motion, so I guess I would have no problem voting for it if there was a friendly amendment to up that particular fee, because it is a business that, again, profits off of a service that we are subsidizing, but otherwise every other user is, I think we're fulfilling our mission as a community.
Nicely said about fulfilling our mission as a community. It is, it's a quality of life issue. And
Okay.
Well, is there...
I'll accept that friendly amendment, even though the earth's not going to shatter, Rick, that I've accepted
I mean, it
that,
seems
but
silly.
yeah.
It's $25, but it's, I think on principle, if there's a deficit and you've identified a way that we can raise a fee, I mean, again, this is for a profit business, and the rest of every other category, I think, fulfills the principle that we try to live up to as selectmen.
What is Dickie? Do you have anything to say? I'm sorry, Dick.
She lives closest to the pond.
Selectman Valancourt.
No, I'm good with the proposal. I don't think raising the profit by a couple of bucks is going to make a big difference, but I think I'm in agreement with every year we go through this, and every year we make the same decision. And you're right, it's quality of life. We want our kids to know how to swim. It's a great resource that we have in town, and I'm perfectly fine with the current fees that we have. But when was the last time we did raise the fees?
Rosemary was not on the board at that point in time.
So that was a long time ago.
We did raise it. It was...
I probably was the no
So
vote,
I took over in 2003 at the pond from DPW. I think that's where that was probably the only time we raised it to $75. If I'm correct, it was $50 before that for
I
the
think you're
permit
right
fee.
about
So we've consistently kept it, the swimming lessons was always $50. To Rosemary's point, I like the fact of all of our kids learning how to swim. So, I mean, if we can make it affordable, I was just pointing out the fact, and Chris, who's very involved with the why, swimming lesson prices are a lot more expensive than that, and that was my only point on that.
Well, the beauty of them at Stevie's Pond is they go every day except Friday.
Monday through Thursday, correct.
And that's where you see your kids really take off in their ability. It's that every day.
Yeah.
And, the why, I'm not sure, but I don't know if they can go for swimming lessons every day. It's usually, when my kids went, it would be, a couple of days a week or once a week or something like that. But my kids also they were at Stevie's every day. And I'll tell you, I ended up with 2 lifeguards out of it, so.
You did?
Yeah. And I-
Okay, so
How do we
Not
cover the
necessarily
gap,
working,
Lynn?
one, but not the other one.
What's the vehicle for covering the gap in this line item every year? Because there has been a gap every year, so there must be an account. What account do we raid to cover this gap?
There really isn't an account. It's just the surpluses from other revenue sources that absorb it, the offset.
But usually at the end of the year, we do have
Surpluses.
That's right. So it's not that we're not.
Right, we do,
We're
and that's
not-
where it is. I mean, you have, it happens with every revenue source. You have some revenues that come in much higher than budgeted, and then you have some that come either right on budget or below budget.
I just want to make sure we weren't
No.
taking away from other programs at the youth
No,
center.
we're
No,
not taking
not at
from
all. It's-
other my other department in terms of recreation.
No other
Would
department
the
is
board
affected.
consider, one of my recommendations, I actually believe the 75 to 90 for the season pass is not something that's going to be really looked at as a major leap. With that said, we are really good, the way we operate, obviously, the youth center, that if people have financial assistance and they couldn't pay, we would make that work. I'm concerned that if we are trying to close the gap, increasing the child care center on 114 to 275 is not closing the gap. I'm comfortable with keeping the swimming lessons the way they are. We are talking a $15 increase for the entire summer to go to Stevens Pond. I mean, and most people there are people that use it on a regular basis. You may think 15's too much, but I think that's something we could withstand.
Yeah, I guess I look at this and go, at some point, where do we draw that line and say, okay, that gap seems a little too large, we've got to impose it. And so the philosophical reality that we have to deal with here is every year we say we don't change. That builds pressure towards that, and then we're in a position of saying, do we work our way towards it? Do we shock it? Do we do whatever? And so that's the only reason why I'm just engaged in the discussion a little bit more, is just kind of make sure we're all thinking that through, to recognize that if we freeze it again another year, that's another year that we know the gap's going to get bigger.
I would theoretically agree with you, but the gap isn't getting bigger.
No, and with the new
data shows it's getting
programs.
smaller.
Well, it's going to start going the other way.
The question is the other way with the minimum raise. I mean, I would be
Right.
fine to keep it another year so long as everyone recognizes if if it starts to go the other way because of the minimum wage, then I'll be much harder, I'll be harder to convince.
But it is, we already know that. I
Well-
mean, Lynn's saying it's going to.
We don't, because we're adding other programs. Sorry to cut you off.
Right.
I am interested to see how the kayak rental goes this summer.
Yeah.
And the reality is the canoes did not come down until after 4th of July. We had no kayaks. I am kind of ambitious and think at $10 an hour that, that could be probably a $1,000 increase over the course of the summer, which closes the gap. It would at least give us a second year of data in terms of whether that works or not.
Give me something, give me
Interesting
something.
about that, Rick, I have a kayak, I have a canoe, and I have a rowboat. I have all 3 of those. But not to lug my canoe to Stevie's Pond and rent it for $10 is enticing as well. It's a pain in the neck to get it up on the car and the whole thing. So I think you'll even find people that perhaps do that, or they need, say, another kayak. They have 1 or 2 and they're bringing 1 more kid or whatever. I think it's great.
It would be interesting for future years, only for a data point, and I know that you love data, Gina, is you always do a good job of putting the historical money that we generate, but I'd love to know, like the passes, because for instance, we've gone from 2014 to 2018, it's a 50% increase in revenue. And I know that weather, you look at 2012 and you see that weather clearly had a big impact that year. Is weather is the only reason, or is it because more people using this as a resource in our
I think
communities?
more people are using this as a resource. Our numbers, just on an average day, if you drive by the pond when it's 85 degrees, it's much different than it was 5 or 6 years ago with how many people are on the same weather days. It's enticing to go to now. When I tell you that the building was held together by duct tape, that's not a lie. That's exactly, it was, I think how it looks, people are like, and the biggest thing is the water quality, right? So our biggest concern with residents has been, well, is it safe? Am I gonna come down with something, or am I going to get sick or whatever? And the quality, I mean, it's proven. We've closed for 1/2 of one day in 3 years. There's no pond in our area that has that record.
That's fantastic.
You know, kudos to Jim's staff, because and I work very closely with Haverhill and Andover and their ponds, and they've all closed for more days than we've closed. So I think some of the stuff we have there, the new program we're proposing, I mean, we do things with Nature Walk with the little kids. There's a lot that people are going, hey, it's not just going down there and lie on some beach.
Agreed. I think we've had ample discussion at this point. Does everyone feel comfortable? Okay. We've had a motion and a second to keep the fees the same as they were in FY 18.
And that includes
And
the for-profit one?
The friendly amendment for the for-profit, as negligible as it is, but if we're going to go with, if we don't want to, that's fine with me. I'm
It's
completely.
$25.
Okay.
No. Okay. So say.
I withdraw it. Yep.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Rick.
Motion passes.
Great, thanks. We'll provide more data next year, and we can take a look at it.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you. All right. Back to the branding. Sorry, ladies.
All right, we're up and running. So, Lauren, I'll turn it over to you.
pictures of Stevie's pond? With boats and paddleboards?
Okay.
Again, my name is Lauren Burke, and I work at Cash in Glastonbury, Connecticut. When we were approached by the town of Andover, North Andover, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you speak up?
Bring it closer, Lauren.
Yeah.
Again, my name is Lauren Burt, and I work at Cashman & Katz in Glastonbury, Connecticut. When we were approached by the town of North Andover to work on this place brand for your town, we were very excited. And I personally have a connection to the area, as I lived in the Merrimack Valley for over 10 years and recently just moved back to Connecticut. So I'm very excited to be here tonight and presenting in front of you. So to begin, I think we should just define for you what a place brand is and why it's important to integrate that into your town. The essence of a place brand is the heart of who we are, expressed to our audiences in a way that forges an emotional connection. It's a promise of an experience people will have, and it's the messaging through communications and how we act as ambassadors. And we, as business owners, residents, and even out-of-town people who like to visit, that can speak to the amenities that you offer. And it is more than just a logo. So when we were developing what your place brand should be, we looked at very successful existing brands like Pure Michigan. They initiated that campaign as an economic development campaign to drive tourism and advertising Michigan as a beautiful natural place to visit. It creates an emotional connection to the beauty and the timelessness of that state. Nashville Music City, is lived. It's felt like right when you get off the airplane in the airport, you have country music spokespeople on the loudspeakers, and it's felt as you walk through town, through all the live music. You're embodied by the spirit of the city, and you take that away with you. And I Love New York is one of the most iconic and icons and brands in history through its simple repetition and simplicity. So we took all of that to develop your place brand. Our overall assignment was to create a brand for North Andover that serves as the foundation of communications supporting economic development and growth. Initially to springboard from the gas disaster and to accommodate multiple audiences, goals, initiatives, and mediums. Something that could work in the immediate and also work in the future for new campaign and new growth for the town. And it's obviously to create an emotional connection to the town and differentiate yourselves from other towns in the area. Immediate surrounding towns within the Merrimack Valley and even further out. Our main priority in your branding is to get people to come to North Andover to visit and to even live. When we talk about the multiple audiences that we want to attract and have your brand be resonating with, we think about your customers that visit your local businesses, new business opportunities, tourists and pleasure seekers that live outside the area, families and individuals looking for homes to settle down, raise their family, college students looking for educational opportunities, and even employees for those businesses. Kind of comes full circle. So when you think about all of that, and what North Andover is, you are a town that has natural beauty. You're historic. You have recreational opportunities, affordable homes, safety, employment, and culture, and so much more. North Andover really does have it all, but when you break it down, what's truly unique is is how all that intersects with each other. It's a clear and focused effort to cooperate for the better of the residents and the businesses, and a remarkable sense of community where people truly feel connected to one another. All those things together work. Businesses, government, amenities, nature, and people, they all work together here in this space, in this place. Your main brand idea is that the true value of North Andover isn't just all the things that you have. It's how all the things come together to create that unique and distinct identity in a very dramatic, diverse area. The unique identity, in turn, creates a welcoming and workable image for those potential businesses and customers, and it's a palpable sense of pride among the residences and the businesses. So those two components of cooperation and community come together as a whole, as all together North Andover. And when we looked at all those pieces and how they all work and mold together, we love the name All Together. And as a phrase, all together, as two separate words, we wanted to visually combine them into one word to give you guys that idea. So once we had the tagline, the place brand name, we were able to move into visual executions. We wanted something simple and something flat that could be used in many different ways. We explored a circular theme that would unite the whole idea of all the pieces of your town coming together all together. And we played with color. Red is a very energetic and exciting color to begin with, but it ties back to your town through like the school colors, and even it would work well on your website. And we used blue and gray as options, which really help pop the red. And we decided on the gray and red execution. We felt like it had more legs to move forward. It would look good in many different applications, and it could become recognizable and relatable over time. And once your name, All Together North Andover, does resonate within the community, an icon was also developed as a second option over time. And we provided a lot of different applications of how this logo could be used among businesses and within residential use to show that sense of pride that All Together North Andover. Bumper stickers, flagpole advertising, even mugs. And over time, and any new initiatives that you want to advertise, whether you are advertising your restaurants and shops, it's 34 restaurants and 102 shops all together, North Andover. 1,500 acres of parks all together, North Andover. And one of the next projects we'll be working on is a video project. It will be to highlight the main themes that we feel are important to the town, springboarding off of the gas explosion. So we're going to tie in that resilient community support aspect, but not focus on that entirely. We're going to be bringing in other storylines of community. The business climate will be a top priority, as well as the recreational amenities that your town offers. And we will do this through creating several short human stories in a very casual, dynamic documentary style, featuring the business people, residents, town leaders, students, and even visitors. These casual conversations with those individuals we will encourage them just to talk about how they find fulfillment and success in North Andover. What makes them happy here? Why did they choose to live here? Why did they start their business here? And through those stories, show the connection that business leaders have with residents, have with families, and school-aged kids. So this video will be compiled as one long video, but they also have the opportunity to have segments within those themes as well.
Oh, is that the conclusion?
So
Okay.
that's the
Sorry.
conclusion. Our goal really with the video too is to be able to break that up into marketing segments, whether it be government focused, how we can get your business up and running, or business focused. But it's really showing the interconnectedness, really that all-together component between the business owners, the property owners, our commercial property owners, the interaction, then that promotion with our other recreational amenities, outdoor art trails network. Jean had given a presentation on the Mills to Hills, and that's the type of real community asset where we can provide an outdoor activity that also links you to our commercial district, where you can then stop, have lunch, and maybe head back to the trail network. And so those types of activities is really what we're focusing on. The other aspect of Altogether I didn't want to really be missed too is that it's really a welcoming logo in terms of, that the community is really open to diversity, and really, the Altogether is altogether. We take every person and that lives in the community and really embrace them. And I think Lauren can really speak to it probably as well, but as they've begun doing some preliminary conversations with folks who are going to be asked to be into the video. And the one thing that they've indicated, they're like, wow, you guys talked about community spirit, but it really comes across as being a true community in pretty much everyone that they've spoken to. And so in terms of legs, we really feel, particularly if you see those last signs, with the economic development component, it's sort of the resilience component of, look, all together we got through this gas disaster, but hey, we've always been together and, promoted our businesses or created things like the, why am I drawing a blank on the word for the Sunday market? Farmers market. I could not, think of that word. Where we also embrace sort of, all together, we also have this great farming history and ongoing, continuing farms that we can then also share in a farmer's market. So we see a lot of legs in terms of the economic development opportunities. Additionally, there's some opportunities where the town will own the logo, and so it may be opportunities to raise funds for whatever, the town may see in terms of additional opportunities for either a nonprofit resource or maybe to feed into different programs that we may want to consider in the future. So this is our proposal on the logo. We could modify the logo, but and there was debate over the blue versus the gray. Andrew was a big proponent of the gray. Jean was too.
That's how our town colors are in our what's the word I want to use? Our neighbor to the south is sort of our rival. They're blue.
I communicated that. So we'd love to hear your feedback on the concept.
So we all live in town, so we have that tunnel vision of, we know we're looking at a North Andover logo. And I think I really like the Altogether idea. I'm just curious, what was feedback when you put this before people who only had a passing familiarity with North Andover. Maybe they were from other parts of the North Shore, South Shore. You know, what was, if it's about attracting people, what were the people that we'd be attracting? What were their reactions when they were exposed to it?
We as the agency didn't do any research in that manner. I don't know if, did you?
No,
present
we've
the
more
logo?
sort of talked about it sort of in-house. There was some significant conversation, and then really this is our first unveiling at all on even the concept.
Sorry. From a design standpoint, we were looking at it as like when people come into the town to visit and they see this logo, All Together North Andover, and they have a positive experience here, they'll remember that positive experience and connect it back to your identity. And when they leave to go home, tell someone else, oh, I had a great time in North Andover. Have you been there? Have you tried this restaurant? Have you shopped here? So that was kind of where we were going. Over time, it would maybe expand out.
I appreciate it. I love the idea. We've tried to get branding opportunities up and off the ground several times. I'd love to know what those people, though, what are the people we're trying to attract? How did they react to it? And how would they
think when they see it?
Yeah.
How does it hit them?
Like, I know I'm looking at North Andover, but I mean, there are people that I get very frustrated with that really know that there's a difference and yet still say, oh, Andover, or, you know, yeah, North Andover's at a neighborhood like Bradford's a neighborhood of Haverhill. And so, like, I know I'm looking at a logo for North Andover, but would the person who's uninitiated think that they're looking at a logo for Andover because it's the red Andover that's popping out and the gray altogether and North falling behind? And so I really do. I like the logo. I love the idea of All Together. I think that it's appropriate that that's the logo, or that's the tagline coming out of funds paying you because of a disaster that brought our whole community together. So it's poetic, but that's me personally. I would love to know how our target audience reacts to that tagline.
But I think
Well, so one of my questions is, I mean, we are branded as red and black. So what was wrong with the black? Why didn't we consider that? Why did we go with blue and gray and not just our North Andover colors, which are red and black? And the other thing is, I do like the All Together. Had you thought about like North Andover All Together and like having the All Together after the North Andover? I mean, I'm not a marketing guy, but I just thinking about it in a different way. It's like North Andover All Together, you know. And then also the color. Just maybe comment on those
No,
things.
I think those are really good points to explore, Dick. And I think what Phil was saying is it's almost like not, you know, put it maybe to North Andover rights, but it would be interesting to see people who don't live in town when you show, what does this mean to you when you, what do you think? It has so many different meanings though, but they're all positive. When you think anything all together, whether it be a team or a community or just that we're close-knit. There's so many ways you could interpret that word altogether. But I'd really love to see or hear what people who don't live in town, and then maybe a segment of those who do live in town. You know, we think it sounds great, but people will go, huh? You know, they might just like, what does that mean? I'm not seeing that, but that would be interesting at least before we jump in both feet. I think, Dick, at the very least, deepen the gray a little bit, if not totally black. I get what you're saying, because that was my first reaction.
I just, it has to be black. It just, it's weak.
Well, look at me, I'm a huge supporter of black.
I'll be really blunt. It's weak.
And gray is
the
kind of
gray
a
is
downer
weak,
color.
Number one. Number two, and I'll be really blunt here, the font, I think we've got to look at some fonts that show action, show some power. It's the circle overwhelms it all. Matter of fact, it's like kind of mishmashy. If you don't get the all together now, it's like all together north. What is that? Okay, it's clever, but it's just mushed. And I think Selectman Valancourt's got a good point. Maybe it's after that, or at, you know, North Andover at all together, or something, because you want people to intuitively pick up all together. You're making them work to understand that. And I thought the idea of logos and branding is that it hits people, right? I love New York, right? You get it. You don't have to put any thought into it. It's like, oh, I get it, right? Nashville, says it right there, music, get it. It's clear, you don't have to interpret. And so I would push back and say, the elements are here. Certainly the application and implementation of this, awesome. You can see so many ways this could be used as an entree. I just think there needs to be a lot more focus on how to make this more powerful graphically, because this is your opener, right? If somebody isn't grabbed by this, none of that matters. And so the incremental strength of this is what we are counting on for this. So black, absolutely, black and red. I think, again, I'm just giving how I see it. Figuring out how to make that all together more intuitive for folks, and looking at some font options that really say North Andover, because what I get here is this circle that's sort of like, yep, okay. It's not driving me. And so those are just my general thoughts.
My one thing I would say that piggybacks on something you said, which is, and Rosemary, it could mean lots of different things. And I like the tagline. I think the tagline is good and gets to the point and catchy. But it would have to be rolled out, in my opinion, with some brochure that had 325 trails altogether, X number of shops altogether, whatever. Like, it would have to be rolled out with that in some big way, in lots of places where you could not possibly avoid it, and add in a one-pager in the newspaper, a thing on bus stops, whatever, so that it's in your face, so that people get what it means. Because otherwise, I think they would be like, oh, what does that mean?
Right.
It means it could mean lots of things to them, and maybe that's fine. We want them to kind of do that, but I like that it's 320 trails and 300 restaurants and whatever, and I just would hate that to be lost. I just feel like it would need to come with some really big rollout with those
I think the
things.
intention would be also, as part of the big rollout, would be this video component, which would emphasize a lot of those different aspects. But I hear you on the signage.
But a lot of people won't look at a video. I mean, it will be there, but, I think you go searching, maybe you look at a video when you're going to search for information on something, but if you're not just clicking a video randomly to I'm going to look at a video on North Andover. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know how to say it. I think it needs to be more in your face than a video, because a video, to me, I don't watch them, for example, unless I'm really seeking out information. I want to go seek out a video, but otherwise, it's not like I'm.
Also has great music to deliver. But it really.
But I wouldn't know that unless I click play.
But
Yeah.
here's something I think that ties into that. I mean, you use like a Spark video, right? If you know Spark video, those are 5 to 7 seconds, right? And to your point, you can it's amazing what you can throw in 5 to 7 seconds. And so if you use the logo as sort of the driver, and then you've got these pieces that can throw it, as I say, 5 to 7 seconds, you can blast that out there. There are different levels of this, and I think to the point that we're all saying here is that, yes, it's great to have this crafted piece. That's wonderful. But again, because we're using this as a, as a shotgun, as a dragnet, it needs to attract at the highest, easiest level possible. And all these things that make North Andover wonderful all together, somehow we've got to figure out a way to deliver that graphically in one eye shot and in, as I say, a 5 to 7 second snippet in some way. And I know you can do it. I mean, I see all the elements here. I guess it's just a challenge back.
Oh, yeah.
Up the game.
And absolutely, part of the video was to not only do this longer, but shorter segments and cut downs for exactly what you were talking about, so it's definitely doable.
But again, I mean, that word, I do like it. There's nothing negative about that word. Like, it's almost saying, when you say, yeah, North Andover, they've got it all together, meaning that we're functioning, we're a great community, but then when you have a group of kids together, we're, all together. I mean, there's so many positive things about that phrase, but just, I think some of the comments, maybe just a little bit more punch. I do agree with Dick and my colleagues that I think a darker, gray is kind of a sad color in many ways, too. It's, black just has more impact, but, in fairness to you, though, I will say, with the blue, but I'm still going with our colors, it's red, white, and blue. There's nothing bad about that either. As a multi-generational North Andoverite, I see that blue at the top, and it's like, oh, no, we can't have that, because we've got...
You see Andover when you see that blue?
As a logo, that was the first thing I thought, oh, why are we...
I see what the...
That's, I agree, the color doesn't speak to me, I don't think of.
Well, as our logo, why would we put a color
yeah.
in there that's not
Oh,
ours?
that's
Well, we
true.
have a choice of something similar, that's my point.
We were just exploring other options, and that's why we did settle on the gray and the red. But I do hear your feedback. I think it's great feedback to have. And now that I'm looking at it from your perspective, I definitely, I do see the Andover more now.
What is the timeline that you're trying to meet?
So for the logo, for the video, they're trying to begin shooting in 2 weeks.
Do we need that logo ready for the video?
We can rework, they actually, the turnaround on some of the ideas on the logo, they really, it was amazing how fast they got back to us on various iterations.
It's just night and day when I think of the last logo exercise taking 2 years and this taking, less than 2 months, and we're already farther ahead than where the last logo project led. So I don't know, they either really didn't know what they were doing, or it makes me want to put the brakes on this just a little bit and vet it through more people. The Merrimack Valley Planning Commission had a grant, and we were the vehicle for that grant, the town of North Andover, where it was about branding from Andover up to the coast. So it's a little bit more of you needed a lot more feedback because you needed all the communities to buy in, but this discussion isn't too different than that discussion.
The previous sort of economic development tool that North Andover had outside of that process was this North Andover awaits you, or what was it? I pulled it up. Await you, and that doesn't really say anything, and so we were looking for active words that we could use, and I think altogether was a unique, no?
Can I just say something about that? Sure. That wasn't a branding campaign, that was an opportunity that we had, like, 1 week to put together something to take up the space at Logan Airport. So we had this opportunity to put an ad at Logan, and that's what,
The good news, Laurie, my son saw it at the
A lot of
airport,
people saw
and
it.
he said, Mom,
I think Mr. Valencourt
what's that all
saw it.
about? So whatever it was, it made an impression.
That was Eric and I. That was not a company hired to.
One final request, just as a thought. So you solicited feedback from internal people, but we talked about how external people weren't really engaged. Even if it's not showing them a logo, I don't see why it would be out of the question to just sit down with them and have the same type of interviews that you did with North Andover residents and business owners and stakeholders. Again, just to understand where our deficiencies are, because of course we're all going to say these amazing things. But to use a real estate analogy, everybody thinks that their own house is amazing, and then you don't see the flaws until somebody else comes in who's never been in there before, right?
Yeah, my famous phrase is, now I turn into the really mean broker, beware, be ready. And so we're going to tell you all the things
that are wrong. Well, it would be interesting because then that there was one thing earlier in the slideshow where you said how North Andover has it all, but one of the things you listed was, affordable housing, which, if there's one thing consistently that said, I'd love to know who said that we had affordable housing, because they've clearly never spoken to anybody else in this community, because we only ever hear about how unaffordable or approaching unaffordable it can be to live here. So that's the only critique I had through the entire presentation, by the way, but it would be interesting to hear what folks around us say.
I think that's a good idea, and I'll work with Megan on that.
Have the logo action. That's one other thing I would throw out there, which is if it can have some sort of momentum in and of itself, that can also help drive that message. So I would just throw that out.
So are you saying how it will fade into the screen or kind
No,
of
I could
explode?
say-
Is that what you're saying?
Are you saying yeah, like
It's going to shake?
But these are all, no, as a reveal, these are ideas, that, again, create power, and you've got multiple forums to deliver it in. So excited about it, and nothing like getting lots of feedback, huh?
I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Great, I agree.
It was really fun, thank you.
Now we will move, sorry. We will move, I'm going to ask everyone's agreement to take the next item out of order, which is the discussion regarding the salary range for town manager, because we have our MRI consultants waiting, and they have been waiting for a long
pacing. I
time.
could see them from
And I
here.
promised them I'd move them up in the agenda, so they
I hope they were
got
watching on
moved
like
up
a
to
closed stream
9:20.
because they had an opportunity to learn so much more about our community.
I hope
Yeah.
I hope we're not paying them by the hour.
I know,
No,
that's
we're
a good
not.
point. No, we're not,
We're not.
to be clear.
Yeah.
I'll wait for them to come in. Sorry, guys. I tried. Okay, so we're moving up the item discussion regarding salary range for the town manager position. In our last meeting, the board authorized me to engage MRI to work with them and Dee to refine the process and get started on our town manager search. And I know you guys already know this, but just to let the public know, we have started the process. Last week, we all met individually with MRI to talk about what we think is important in our next town manager, the skills, capabilities, experiences, et cetera. And other meetings are scheduled with the other key stakeholders, including a public input session, which is set for March 21st. I'll just throw that out there for the public so they can save the date. That will obviously be posted. But there's one item that I felt it was important for us to have a specific discussion around, and that is the compensation range for the position. So in speaking with MRI, they had recommended to me that the salary range should be included in the job posting. They considered it standard to be in the job postings that they do, and think that candidates will specifically be looking for it, as opposed to not putting any expected salary. And after talking with all of us about the skills and experience that we expect, they had recommended to me that we indicate a total compensation of $200K plus, because in their experience, that is what they have told me they see as common in the market right now for the type of person that we're looking to attract. I know that that's a large figure and potentially shocking to folks. It was to me the first time I heard it, but I think that the number is validated by the research that I did in preparing for a potential salary raise discussion with Andrew Miller last December. And I know Dee has done some research as well, looking into sources from the MMA and so forth, where she could get salary information for similar surrounding, similar towns to us, which I think she's provided. Did we hand those out? So that's input for us to consider. And I will just point out that the average town manager salary of the surrounding towns that Dee provided was $203K, and I should say total compensation, not base salary. So 203 average was a base pay of $190 plus an auto allowance on average of $6K, deferred compensation $11K, and other $6K around. So that's input for us to consider. So I wanted to have a discussion with this board as to what we think we expect the salary to be. And I think I'll just say from the outset, my feeling is that we should base the compensation range or target on what we believe the market is demanding for the skills and capabilities that we want to have in our town manager. So might we pay less if we don't get the ideal person that meets our ideal description? Yes, we might. But we might pay more also if we get someone that shoots it out of the park. So I think we need to think about what we want to define as our ideal candidate and what we think that ideal candidate would be worth.
I always think back, I cringe actually, because several years ago, in fact, it was the first year, I think I was on the Board of Selectmen, we negotiated our prior town manager's salary, we approved it, and then we made jokes, truly harmless jokes about how we were getting him for a steal. And I remember afterwards, a resident, Mr. Limpert, reminding us that, we were lucky that Andrew Mailer was willing to stay with us for as long as he did, and was really so accommodating when it came to those salaries, and I think or his salary, and I think it was because he had an opportunity to be here, saw that it was a good community to work in. But I think that we all went through this exercise briefly back in December, where I think that the best argument was, if there was an opportunity where our current town manager was asking for a salary increase, we should try to work with him, because the alternative was him leaving and then us getting a new town manager where we would have to pay at least that amount anyways. I don't think that we need to go, based on the data that we were given, and we're just talking about base, and I'm looking at the 190 average, and that's kind of where I came in tonight, thinking that 190 plus, so that way we're setting a basement, and nobody's looking at us saying, oh wow, I'm gonna really have to go in there if I want the job, and bare knuckle box to get what they think they're owed. I would be completely comfortable with motioning the 190 minimum and working from there as the basement, so that we're consistent with the average.
190 for the ideal candidate as we've described.
Are you saying 190, Phil, with including any incentives, like a car allowance, maybe any other incentive for compensation? Is that all included in the 190 as the low end, or is that then are those items added on top of that?
I would say anything related to compensation, so not including the additional benefits, not like you said, Dick, but rather, so yes, excuse me, like you.
Salary.
So not talking about any type of compensation, so yes, so we gave, for instance, we negotiated an extra fee with Andrew Mailer when it came to his car expenses. I know some communities have housing expenses, and we briefly entertained that at one point in informal conversations, and so.
But you're saying the 190 is all in at 190,
for compensation, right? Yes, consistent with the average that we were presented. Actually, technically $506 below average.
No, so that's not all in, that's base.
That's
base. The all-in was 203.
With the additional, I would still stick with.
With deferred comp, if we would off with deferred comp and other, other benefits, maybe
I would
car
still
allowance.
stick at the 190, because we're talking about a basement right now, so they know coming in that that's the absolute minimum that we would be willing to offer. But I'm not in favor of putting a range, because I don't want to put a ceiling either. I wouldn't want to see us say 190 to 200 and then not be able to negotiate beyond that.
I definitely don't think we should put a ceiling, even if we put X to Y plus. To me, people don't see that plus. They just see X to Y.
Yep.
And if they make above Y, then they'll say, oh, well, I'm not. I don't want someone to say, well, I'm not going to apply for that job because I already make above that, and so what would be the point?
Completely get it.
So I feel like we should say, in the job advertisement, we describe the candidate, and then we say compensation of X. Let's say it's 190, if we went with what you just said, Phil, of 190. And I think the language says it commensurate with skills and experience, et cetera. So if they don't have the skills and experience of what we've outlined as the ideal candidate, if they have something less because we can't find that person, well then we have an opportunity to pay less, but the expectation is if we find this ideal candidate, they will get that amount or potentially more if they're better than ideal.
So they understand the starting off point.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's an important point.
Anyone knows they can negotiate a salary, right? That's a standard, but we have to give them an idea of what we're willing to pay.
My concern is, depending on who applies, and we could get someone from, say an assistant town manager from a community that's larger or has a similar budget and now just needs that jumping off point. I don't frankly think that there's anything wrong with doing 175 and up to give them such a big increase more than what our town manager, who has a tremendous amount of experience and obviously a skill, to start them lower, I mean, higher. And I wonder too, sometimes will some people be somewhat intimidated by that large number if they're in a community that they're being paid considerably lower, to the point thinking, oh, they probably won't even consider me. You know, theirs is so low, because as you can see in here, some of these statistics are lower. I think to have a wide range that would encourage someone who has a lot of experience as an assistant town manager and is ready to make the leap. And I think there could be some people with the skills to do that. Now, if they have, again, I just look at what we paid our own town manager, and I think people would certainly agree that he had tremendous amount of skills and background. I don't want to overpay somebody either. You know, it's not a nice message to send to even our town employees, some who have a lot of skill and been with us a long time, that I think it's no surprise, we've talked about this before, some of our senior staff is on the average to low average. I mean, I look at what the superintendent makes, understanding what our two recent hires of the deputy and the assistant town manager, what our finance director makes, our chiefs, what they make in comparison to other communities. I don't know that we really need to start with, I think, a range commensurate to their experience. I'd like to speak to the fact that we just had this wonderful presentation. We're a great town, and any town manager that comes into our community that has a AAA bond rating, that has great reserves, that's a beautiful place to live. If one thing I hear all the time, we are a beautiful community. We've proven our sense of community with the fires. I mean, open space, I mean, we can go on, history, one of the oldest communities in the country. They're going to come into this job, frankly, and all they have to do is steer the ship correctly, and within a couple years, they'll be opening a senior center or less, a field. They just need, it's all been laid out for them. So what my point is this, I think we can attract some very attractive candidates without overpaying what we even paid our town manager.
I have a lot of thoughts on what you said.
Okay.
Number one, I think Andrew was underpaid, and the data that we looked at preparing for a discussion of giving him a salary showed that he was largely underpaid for the skills and experience and number of years experience he had. If you looked at comparable years experience, they were making substantially more than him. So even if we hire someone with less experience, in some of the examples we looked at, people who we know have been in office longer, or shorter period of time, we're still making, in some cases, around the 200 figure. So it's not unreasonable to say that a newer person with less skills than, years experience than Andrew isn't going to be able to get 190 wherever they go. So that's my issue with comparing it to Andrew. My problem with, I guess, comparing it to the other division head salary is that we're basing a salary on the skills and capabilities and experience required for the job, and it's completely different to say what skills and capabilities and experience are required for each of the division head positions. So of course their salaries are going to be different. So I wouldn't compare it to that.
I hear you on that point, except for the fact that we're supposed to be working as a team. And we do have town employees who know that they're underpaid and understaffed. And the point is this, it's the advertisement that says they're going to pay this pretty good salary. And this is, I mean, the comps are good. There's quite a different range. But there's some that are considerably lower. But even looking at this, if you look at what other town managers are making in other parts of the state, or frankly in other states, they're not making this kind of money. So you hire them at a reasonable pay and see how they do. With offers of, you do a great job, we will pay you accordingly. My point is this, I don't think we need to lock ourselves into, I know you say, well, we don't have to pay that, but you've advertised it.
No,
Yeah, because
whoa.
we advertise for the ideal candidate.
But you're-
We say,
but you're
here's the
saying-
ideal candidate, and here's the salary we will offer the ideal candidate. If we don't get the ideal candidate, if we get someone, if the best candidate we can get doesn't match that ideal criteria, there's something less.
So what,
Then
why,
we-
for that same reason, why don't you put in the salary, whether it be 175 to, I know what was talked about, 200K plus, commensurate with education, experience, and I don't, it's just like, traditionally, that's how job offerings are. I mean, you know, you look at things and there's a range, and it's always commensurate with blah, 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 but, so, I don't know, I think it's,
I mean, one addition, well, so I do have a motion on the table, Madam Chair. But my other point, though, more about this was, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. You look at the MMA. I mean, the MMA does a really interesting job of getting information out there about all 351 cities and towns and the pay that they get, and just the discrepancy between what mayors get versus town managers and city managers, and it's interesting. And then you look at New Hampshire communities. I mean, the juggling.
I agree.
But I'm just thinking about, I know what you're saying. All you have to do is steer the ship. My experience in the last 2 weeks is as my wife and my in-laws say, I select her. I have selected a lot in the past 2 weeks, and not having just not having that extra set of hands. I was almost going to say not having a competent town manager, but I want to give a compliment to Lynn Savage, who has suffered Sunday night phone calls and text messages from me, who suffered a 6:30 a.m. phone call, text message from me this morning. But I'm sure you had to get on the phone anyways based on what your response was. So I mean, this isn't, we laugh and we joke, it's a 24/7 job. I mean, I understand that. I think all 5 of us do. And if we didn't understand it prior to September 13th, we did after that. I just think that it's important that we send the message that we're serious. And effectively so you're putting 175 out there, so we're quibbling about $15,000, right?
and can I just, there is, for the right candidate, and if we are in a position that we have to pay a certain amount for the right, I'm not saying that I won't do that. I just want to make sure that we have, I think a reasonable range. I think that is a reasonable range.
Can I ask so I have a motion. Nobody has seconded it, but so we're having a discussion about
Yeah.
a motion, which,
No one is second.
We should be second, we should have seconded it, yeah, so I'll second your motion so we can have a valid
Yeah.
discussion.
thank you,
But-
Mr. So so a question just for the consultants was, can you explain to us how this line in a posting, the salary range, how that impacts? Oh.
You can't come back. No, seriously.
Well, I got a second out of him.
He's back. The miracle of television.
So my question, Dick, and I did not literally cut you off, though you did get cut off, was just how do you as consultants, and also if you want to provide your personal experience, like how do you use that? Like I know how I would in my professional service, but when you're in this particular field and you're dealing with elected boards, when you see postings and you see salary ranges, just tell us the strategies that you'd use, because you've given our chair a recommendation. It doesn't sound like we're even discussing going that high as the basement, so.
You want to start?
Well, I want to step back and talk about the whole job ad, because compensation, although it's important, I know it's the motion on the table, but the job ad has a number of different elements to it that are extremely important to the candidates. First of all, the population. Somebody's going to want to know the size of the community. So if they're in a community of 5,000, this may not be in their range of management skills. And then, we talk about a proactive, energetic manager. So this sets the stage for the kind of, the profile, the fit of the person that we're looking for. We want to describe the area in which the municipality is located. And we talk about it being, in a beautiful area, a historical heritage area, 24 miles from Boston. These are all factors that the candidate, she or he, are going to look at as they scan any job ad, before they even get to salary. They don't focus in on salary first. They say, are my skills going to be the right fit for this community? You know, is it a AAA community? Are they struggling financially? Do they have a high unemployment rate? You know, although you can't capture all of that here, they're going to want to know as much as they can about this town before they even talk about salary.
Okay.
And then we think a community like this, to get the attention of the candidates, has to have a salary that will do that. And I've used the word eye-popping in some communities, if you want to consider it. But something to get people's attention, that you're serious about compensating your manager in a total package.
But so I'm not splitting hairs with that. So you had said that all those other things that, they look at first.
Right.
But you're using salary to attract their attention.
Well, it's a mosaic. So it's not just one thing. It's not just one factor, but it's a series of things that go into a candidate's mind on getting them to think about coming to a community like this. And it's, it's the solid foundation the community's on. It's the fact that you've got, a AAA bond rating, close to Boston. Those factors play very heavily into a candidate. Another factor, although we don't say it here, but they would do it in their research, is they would find out that there's no residency requirement. That's another big issue for candidates. A residency requirement can be a stumbling block. It wasn't in the 40s and 50s when a lot of these
just professionalizing
charters were put into place, but I would say, in our experience, it is today. So by the, when they look at the salary, it all is part of a mosaic. So we're looking to attract high-quality candidate with a serious salary up to, and they all realize they have to negotiate. We don't do that for them. So they have to be able to come in and sell themselves, basically, and then, sell themselves of their worth. But by putting in the kind of numbers you're talking about, that'll get their attention. And then when we speak to them, we say, yeah, it's,
You said a good word, though.
I'm a little confused, though.
You said a good word, serious, which is, just so you know where my motivation is, I think that everything we've accomplished shows that we take our success very seriously, and so I wasn't able to put in words, but I think that you hit the nail on the head with using that one word, that I want the salary to show that we take management seriously, and I mean, you have a high standard that you're going to have to meet if you take this job. That's where I was coming from.
Can I comment a bit?
Sure, Bob.
One of the things that we see, and you've got the survey results as we have, one of the things that will be important is the threshold you set for that minimum, what you're talking about. You've got to be careful about that and what that actual number is going to be. Because, for instance, if you set up, I don't know, let's pick a number, 175 as a minimum pay going forward for your new manager, you've got managers here that are making that. They won't be interested. They'll look at it and say, that's a nice town, probably a good challenge. I don't know if I want to go through the whole exercise of applying when I'm there where I am now. And I say from real life experience, we've talked to a number of managers around this area who we've talked about some of the positions that were opening up around this area. And what happened to them is they've talked to either Buzz or myself or Alan, and they've said, I would make a move if it's worth my while to make a move, and that word gets out, and their elected board bumps their salaries up, so they won't leave.
All of that is true, but if you listen to me, I said for someone who might be a very well-qualified, very well-educated
Could be an assistant.
assistant town manager, I would say that we have some of those people in this room. But let it be what it may.
But you don't base a salary on the candidate as much as the value of the skills and capabilities that you're seeking for the position. So we are seeking a highly qualified, proven, motivated, energetic, innovative individual, all the words we all said to them in our interviews. And that is a very strong candidate. Now, I think that we don't want to say we could get away with paying him $175. No, that package, that person, the ideal person who has all those traits, to me, we're saying those traits are worth $190, since that's the motion on the table. If we don't get those traits, if we get some new inexperienced person who we say, for whatever reason, we think that they can do the job, and we're going to give them a try even though they're not the ideal candidate, then we'll reduce the salary to not the ideal candidate salary. I guess that's how I'm looking at it. I'm not looking at as much as, well, this is the scenario person we could get. I'm saying these are the skills we're looking for, and I'm putting a value on those skills.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I mean, this is not the candidate. This is the person we select. So I think we get sidetracked in talking about this being the measure of who we're attracting. This is who we want to hire. And so it is the destination salary we're talking about here, and value is what it all comes down to. This person is the CEO of this town. If you're a CEO of a company that has a $100 million plus budget, and you're looking at these CEOs of these other towns, in your survey, 2/3 of them make over $190,000. And when you do the math, let's do some simple math here. Assume a 3-year contract. 3-year contract means that town manager is going to be overseeing somewhere between $300 and $350 million of budget. You're talking about a difference here between, say it's between 75 and 90,000, or 90 and 190 and 203, of about $40,000 over 3 years, which is 1/100th of a percent. We had a conversation here now back over an hour ago about making choices based upon value in this community. And I would say the parallel to our choice about the fees and how we're going to fund what's happening at Stevens Pond is very parallel to this. It's all about value and what we want to attract. And I would take it a step further in a practical illustration. I don't know of anybody, and I'm in the finance mortgage industry, I don't know anybody who comes in and says, here is the bottom cheapest commission that I'm going to work for. Now, if I do a good enough job, you can pay me more. You don't start off like that. You come in and you say, here is the value I present, here's my experience, here's my expertise, and because of that, I am worth to you, in terms of product and result, X amount. And that's the way I think most people negotiate. I think that's the way many transactions work. And so to that end, I look at this salary as this is what the person who fits our value evaluation will be paid, because they are worth it to us as a community. Just my simple take.
Mr. Valencourt, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so I think, once we set this number, whether it's 190 or whatever, that I don't think we're ever going to be able to go back and say, you really didn't you didn't fit all of our qualifications, so we're going to offer you the job, we're going to offer it to you at 175. I don't think that horse is ever going to come back in the barn. I think once it's out, it's out. So I think, we need to set a number that is going to be something that we're going to be able to stick to. And I don't think we're going to, I guess my point is, we're not going to be able to say, you know what, we're going to hire you, but you really didn't meet all qualifications, so we're going to give you less than what we advertised. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we need to make sure the number we're setting is realistic, and that we are going to have to stick to it as a minimum. So I would say the 190 is probably something that I can support. given the other average salaries that I've seen in the area, and what we were willing to offer Andrew. Now, Andrew, we were willing to bump him because we knew he was for his value, he was underpaid. But I don't think we should be penalizing other folks coming in because of that. I think we should offer a salary that's going to attract good candidates. So I would support the 190.
But Dick, if, say there was someone who came in who didn't actually have town manager's experience, but was a real dynamo, great education, has got assistant town manager skills in a good, solid community, you would still feel as though you need to bump them up to the 190?
Well, I don't know if they weren't. Well, why wouldn't we? I mean, if that was the base salary that we were offering, why would we want to back someone off to 175 and say, you're great, you're good, but you're not really all that good, so we're only going to give you 175? I mean,
Well, that's
I
what I
don't
meant for a slightly lower range.
And if we think if we think 175 is 175, then we should be talking about a different number. But I don't think we can. I don't think we can back it off if we are. I just don't see how we could do that. I mean, I get if I went for a job and it was a certain salary, and then when I got there and I after going through a whole interview process, they said, oh well, really, we were offering we advertised that, but we don't really think you're up for that, so we're going to give you something. I don't think I'd take that job.
I agree with you, and I agree with that point. That's why I had the range that I think is comparable, is a good range for a dynamo assistant town manager who's ready for that next step. And I think, as I said, I'm certainly open to a higher range for a really good, well-experienced town manager. We just don't know who's going to apply yet. That's part of the problem. That's why I feel for the range. Let me just ask you, so our consultants, you recommended that we just do 200K plus, that's it. And you've changed your mind on that now?
Well, I think, what we're talking about is a compensation package. Compensation package. So, it could be, for example, 190 in base compensation, and then 5,000 in car allowance. That's fairly standard, something like that, 4 to 6 and $1,000 in car allowance. And then if you want to add, if you want to consider a deferred compensation plan of 4 to 6 thousand on top of that, you'll see that's fairly common today.
But I understand that, but when you initially made the recommendation, you said 200K plus. So are you saying it would be 200K plus total package? Is that how you would advertise it? But you had stressed the fact that you needed to come out with a really strong number of 200K plus. Is that correct? That's what you told me.
That's right, yep.
But now you are
well
backtracking off that
plus
somewhat.
Whatever, what else, might be negotiated.
I didn't. Can I? So I had heard that you had concerns, and I heard about the desire for 175. I mean, I don't have an opposition to 200. My motion for 190 was that effort to meet somewhere in the middle. I also think the other point is that our consultants aren't working on commission. They want us to get the best possible applicant. And so their only interest, frankly, reputation-wise, professionally, is that we get the best possible applicants. And so I think that's an important point to consider. If they're recommending the salary range, and we spent a substantial amount of time this evening talking about how great our community is, and yet at the same time, this idea that we're going to settle for some mediocre candidate who's going to be below this compensation that, frankly, this is skewed almost towards the argument that you're trying to make, because you have town managers baked into this average that are from communities half the size, less than half the size. I mean, Weston and Westwood, where their town managers make below the average, but they're, again, less than half the size of North Andover. And so North Reading, which is half the size of North Andover. I mean, if you took out those communities, which are so substantially smaller, I mean, I look at it and I'm like, I still don't think that we're competitive, but I'm trying to meet halfway.
But I keep saying the same point. I'm talking about if we do seem to agree or like a candidate, who would be an assistant town manager. We also talked about people from other areas, other fields, just to be open-minded. That's what I'm saying. I think you're missing my point, that I don't disagree that if we've got a great candidate, and I want to make this perfectly clear, I'm not going to be penny wise and pound foolish. I just don't want to overpay someone who's a great assistant town manager or whatever field we all talked about. We'll be open-minded to even someone with a strong business field. I don't know that it would work, but we're just being open-minded to other thoughts.
If you're not worth 190, I don't want you. So I'm being blunt. So I don't want someone.
If you don't have any experience as a town manager, but you're so awesome, we want to hire you, we want to pay you as we would a town manager. So personally, I think we've said, I mean, is there any final closing comments, or can we make a
I
vote?
think that's 100%. The person fits this criteria, and we are blind to who they are, and in some ways blind to what their experience is. Either they meet this criteria or they don't. Otherwise, you almost could make the case of ageism in this, which is to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay you less. Why? Because I can, because you don't have this depth of experience. However, you're the person who we think best fits the role. I don't think you can have it both ways.
But we don't know who's applying yet.
Right, so let's
But we don't have
open
to
the
know.
door.
We know
don't
the
have-
value
right.
of the person we're looking for.
Exactly.
So let's leave it at that, and let's, do you want to have a final comment?
I just want to comment that if you look at the ad, the way we structured
Yep.
it, I know we can revise it based on what your vote is here tonight. We've said originally the total compensation range of whatever the number is, in addition to a generous benefits package. My suggestion is, whatever you come up with for the total compensation number, the generous benefit, just say a competitive benefits package, that everybody understands that, it's health insurance, it's those other personal time off, all that kind of stuff, that you'll negotiate through a contract with whoever you hire. So the total compensation range, just to understand where I think you're going with this discussion, would be the 190, which would include other things like a deferred comp or those type of things, because you're talking a total compensation. We can change that language. If you want to just say expected starting salary will be in the $190,000 range, and some way we work out other benefits that you don't currently give Andrew, but you may want to think about it based on your competition out there when you see these type of charts. So my point is, we just need to look at that language, how we want to phrase that.
I don't disagree with that, because it is confusing. I think sometimes we talk about.
I think my motion was for base salary.
Base salary. I thought I heard you say that, but
So the motion is for 190 base salary. That leaves us the door open to possibly give something additional like deferred comp, although we don't have to, and change generous compensation to and health insurance, because that's what we all mean by that. So we're not committing to a car or deferred comp or whatever.
Right,
That's
right.
stuff that would be negotiated through the job offer. Okay. So, motion on the table is for 190 base salary, and it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you, guys.
thank you. We've got a number of meetings this week that Dee has scheduled for us. Thank you very much. And we will be in touch.
Yep, great. Okay, next.
See you Wednesday morning.
Next item on our agenda is the appointment of Adrienne Goldman to the Sustainability Committee.
And Selectman Valencourt and I, great interview. Somebody who's already attending meetings. We appreciate Adrienne stepping up and willing to help. She brings a lot of some good ideas to the board. So I would offer a motion that we appoint Adrienne Goldman to the Sustainability Committee.
Then I'll second that motion with, once again, our thanks to all those who step up and volunteer to help make our town a better place to live, work, and play.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next, sorry. Yes, sorry. Thank you. We can do that. You guys are here for licensing. Okay.
Madam Chair, motion that we move into licensing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, we're in licensing.
Sorry, guys.
No, this all happens. Okay, so in licensing, We've got a request for, well, let's just start out. With people's indulgence, can we just move to item B in licensing, which I believe is the request of Green Light Auto Transport LLC for a Class 2 license at 865 Transport Street. Is there anybody here to speak to that? Turnpike, I'm sorry. Getting a little late. Is there anybody here who can speak to that for us? And thanks again for your patience tonight. Yeah. Hi.
My name is Daisy Abiagdala, and this is my husband, Charbel. We are owners of Greenlight Auto Transport LLC. We are already a freight forwarding company, and we also have trucks for transporting cars. So this license is just going to add to our many services related to motor vehicles. It's only going to be for purchase of wholesale cars. No cars will be on premises whatsoever. We got a lot of visitors to the office asking, where are you going to put all the cars? You can't keep cars here. I'm like, yeah, don't worry. No cars are going to be on premises. This is solely going to be for purchasing used vehicles and using them for export.
So you won't be selling them directly to the public?
No.
Where do you guys go to?
Middle East, Africa, anywhere that customers want.
So you would have, earlier this evening, feels like forever ago, there was a representative from Condo Association here who spoke about just building in some conditions. You have no opposition to those conditions, or do you want to speak to them?
I understand their concern. They are all concerned that we're going to have cars that are untagged on site. We're not going to have any of that because the cars are going to go straight from the auction overseas. So we're not even going to touch the cars, nothing. It's just that the only way to purchase vehicles from auctions, you would need a license. So that's the only reason why we're applying for this license, because it's one of the, it's mandatory to actually purchase cars from auctions.
And I think that where they were coming from was that it has happened before, where we've granted licenses, been told, not really actually similar, but similar in that it was just going to be an office setting, and all of a sudden cars appeared. And so that's why
we already used the office for a freight forwarding license.
Okay.
So this is just going to add for us to purchase these vehicles wholesale and export them.
Also, we've had, where we've had businesses up there that were selling cars directly to consumers, and we've had reports from the state police that, that was against the law because they didn't have a lot, they didn't have a garage to service the cars.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking you. So you again, once again, you will not be selling directly
Not
to.
at all. I don't think they're able to register them anyway if we sold them, but we're not going to be selling them at all. Not to consumers.
So I'd hear a motion with the stipulation that this is wholesale only, dealer to dealer, no retail sales.
Correct.
And granting of this license. I think that's consistent with what the recommendation coming from our interim town manager and from other town departments.
Mr. Chair, based on that feedback, I'd incorporate that into a motion where we say we approve the Class 2 license for Greenlight Auto Transport LLC at 865 Turnpike Street, as presented and with the conditions you just laid out.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thanks again. All right, we'll move back to the top of the licensing agenda. Request for Small Act Farms for one-day wine and malt license for dinner at the farm stand on March 16th, at the end of this week, from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. I don't think there's anybody here from Small Act Farm to speak to this.
No, it does.
Again, it's that last minute, right?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen acting as licensing commissioners approve the one-day wine and malt license for dinner at the farm stand at Small Lake Farms from 5:30 PM to 9:30 PM on March 16th, 2019, as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, what's their normal cutoff time on a Saturday night?
This is a Friday, isn't it? 16th.
No, it's Saturday.
16th, Saturday, yeah.
It's this Saturday.
Is their normal cutoff time 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? I think it's 10 o'clock,
I think
right?
it's 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah,
I think it's
okay.
10 o'clock.
And I'm good with it.
That's how I remember, but
Yeah.
we talked about it.
But 9:30's, I think, within that window. We'll just double check, but yeah, it's 10. Laurie's confirmed it's 10.
Yeah, that's fine then.
Yeah. I think we have motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right, and the last, request from Merrimack College for 4 special annual liquor licenses. I don't know if there's anybody here to speak to this,
Oh.
Oh, my goodness.
but wow.
And we were talking about Merrimack and everything before. If only we knew, we could have.
Well, I would have
We're not
loved to
going.
have jumped in, but,
Why did you do that to all these people?
so, well.
If we knew, we would have planned a better night.
No, thank you for having us. Nicholas McDonald, Vice President, General Counsel at Merrimack College. I'm the name on these licenses that we have now. I brought the cavalry to show you the seriousness with which we bring to this, and just to thank the town for its coordination with us on lessening the administrative burden of one-day licenses, which I'm sure everybody is very familiar with, and coming up with a better plan, we believe a better plan, that will allow us to lighten the burden on the administrative offices at the town, and to allow us to have the events that we have always been having on campus. So this would just be simply a expansion of what we already have on campus and just a different format of it. I brought the police chief and Paul Gallant from Sodexo, who manages our liquor licenses at all our events, to answer any questions that you may have. I know this has been pretty well trotted out, but I wanted to be sure to address anything that the commission might have.
Well, one thing, go ahead.
Well, sorry.
No, please, shoot.
My question's, the material we got is not in color, so
Oh, yeah.
I had a hard time discerning where the, service areas were. So I was just wondering if we could go through each drawing and
Sure,
you can
sure.
point it out to me?
So it did come through on my end in color, but yeah, if we have some copies of it, just so you can see it.
Oh, great, yes, that's much better.
I guess it doesn't come through in the online
Yeah.
format.
Is it one copy of each? Oh,
No, it's just one.
yeah, okay, sorry. Well,
So maybe I could go through, there is a current license that Merrimack has that spans 2 different areas on campus. One, the Sackowitz Campus Center, and the Blue Line Club in the Merrimack Athletic Complex, which hits a lot of the events on campus. The Student Center, of course, student activities, the bar, the student bar, and then the hockey games. So I'm sure many of you have been to, which allows for the sale of alcohol in those areas. The one-day licenses are, of course, outside of those areas. I know that sounds obvious, but and the number of events that take place outside of those areas had become an administrative burden for everybody involved. And so what I try to do on these maps is indicate the areas which would take account of all of those, well, not all of those one-day licenses, but the vast majority of the one-day licenses to be covered.
So these pictures, it looks like has highlighted where someone could be standing with a drink, but not necessarily where it would be, from where it would be served. So like
Correct.
the concession stand or the
Correct.
sales counter, whatever.
There are, on some of these, you would see where they would be sold, but you are correct. We'd have, a setup for a bar area, And some of these do. I don't know if you can.
So like
see
on,
it.
it looked like it was on, for example, Dwayne Stadium.
Yep.
So where it says Upper Plaza, is that little rectangle within the Upper Plaza
Correct.
what you're saying is the service area, so that's where someone goes to purchase?
Correct.
And then they have to stay within that
Those
yellow
bounds,
area?
those-
There's like a fencing or something?
Correct. They're all within bounded areas.
And in the lower plaza, it's these 3 rectangles to the left of the bleachers? If I'm looking at the picture,
Yes, ma'am.
that's where the serving would be, like those are concessions or
Correct.
something? Okay.
Correct.
So one of the areas that leaps out to me is O'Brien Plaza, the outdoor lawn. How do you, and like the outdoor patio at the campus center, how do you contain it in that area?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we have are at least physical boundaries right now, which we would tie in, right? So it would be within bounded areas. We want to keep track of alcohol sales as much as anybody else, especially on campus. So we would bound it by security, bound it by piping, pipe and drape, things to that effect. Paul Gallant, who's here from Sodexo, can probably answer these questions better than I can, but we are interested in keeping the event contained, as we know our responsibilities with regard to alcohol sales and being
Yes,
able to contain.
so that's a little bit of a tricky one because, for instance, for our 4th of July race, we have a fenced-in area in order to contain that. And so I think because this is a annual license, I guess I'd like a little more discussion or understanding of that because there's a difference between a curtain and a fence. There's a difference between, you know what I mean? So I think this is the time to kind of sort that out. So Chief, have you got a,
Or Paul
Or
Gallant
Paul?
from
Go ahead.
Sodexo.
My name's Paul Gallant.
all right, Paul?
So basically, what we do with those types of events, so if something was going to be on O'Brien Plaza, that would be an individual event, not something that we do every day, that we would get a one-day license for now. We rent barriers from Christian Tent Rental. So what we do is we put up, I don't know if you've seen those metal barricades that they do at races and things. That's pretty much how we cordon off the entire area.
Okay.
We would have security detail, not only with Merrimack Police Department, but also an individual security company that we use. That's pretty much how we handle those situations. As far as the IDing of people, we do provide wristbands. We ID with ID checks, so we can test for, electronic ID checks, so we can test for fake IDs and that sort of thing. And that's pretty much how we handle those one-offs, if it's not in a building, so.
And that's, I think, the biggest, in granting this license, and that's why we really want to go through this process.
Sure.
It gives you latitude, but it's that also, enough rope sort of a thing.
Right.
It gives you enough latitude, so we want to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because, to me, that's where the kind of biggest potential of sort of, and I live right next to Merrimack,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I know how the deal goes. I'm okay with it, but it's that possibility of kind of migration that I want to, again, reinforce. We really have to be clear on that. Don't want people migrating out of these areas.
Yeah, well, we take it very seriously because it's our, Sodexo manages the liquor, the alcohol for the school. And, so we have very strict policies in place of one drink per person when they come up to the counter. Like I said, IDing is a must, is mandatory. Usually we ID at the point of entry, which would be past those gates. We also ID at at the bar itself if they assume that the person is, still underage or whatever, so they would look at a secondary ID. And like I said, the drink policy is one drink per person, so we do tend to keep that really tight under control.
So I guess the assumption is, yes, that there will be bounded areas. These areas weren't chosen, off the top of my head. These were based upon the already existing one-day licenses and the restrictions that we already have on them. So that would be the idea.
Other questions from the board?
It's still quite an undertaking, though. I mean, with all these different, some of them wide open, it does give me a little bit of pause, but.
Well, to that point, I don't think there will be wide open events. I'm sure the chief could tell you he's not a big fan of those, and the only way to manage such events is to have it enclosed. It wouldn't be, I can't even think of an example of, it's not Great Woods or something like that. It's, enclosed spaces.
In having attended many events at Merrimack over the years, I can vouch for the chief's ability to keep places secure, and the presence that they have in the police department there is very, very good. And like I said, I've attended many events over the year where alcohol was served, and it's always very well managed.
And you are using the electronic ID.
Correct.
Using that whole process, which we appreciate.
I imagine it's in your interest, right? I mean, the last thing you
Yeah,
want is to be in there because you have an alcohol violation.
That's a great point. This is a reputational issue for Merrimack College, and we don't want to be in that business.
No.
In fairness to you, I cannot recall that we've had an issue coming from Merrimack College, so to the chief's credit on that, so, and the schools. But
Well, he's
it's,
very intimidating, Chief.
it's just, you hear our concerns, so.
Absolutely.
You gotta do your best to make it all work.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen acting as licensing commissioners approve the 4 special annual liquor licenses for Merrimack College as presented.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion from the board? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you to everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience and the
Thanks.
wild
Thank you.
ride we took you on.
Mr. Chair, I motion that we move out of licensing.
Second.
Second.
All in vote? Aye.
Aye. Okay. We are back to consent items. I believe we're on item C. Town meeting warrant.
Madam Chair, I'll motion to open the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, I will say, this is not the only time we have to discuss this, so given the hour, I might suggest that we discuss the things and the items on the warrant in the next meeting, unless there's something on here that you guys really want to discuss tonight.
So you're saying to defer to our next meeting?
That's what I was thinking. Advise me, staff, if that's
Yeah,
acceptable in your opinion.
Yeah, and there's actually some changes a couple articles that aren't in there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Placeholders in the index.
So we have enough time.
You do.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can put it
Well
on.
then,
Usually it goes on every meeting now.
Right, we open it and close it each time to accept whatever citizen things that came in this time or whatever gets added, right, as we go.
Yeah, and fine tune some of the articles.
Yeah.
She, Joyce said there were no other citizen petitions.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
I believe all 3 are in there.
There's only 2 here.
There's only 2.
Is the time frame for citizens petitions, is that closed?
Yes.
Today
Yeah.
was the last day.
4:30.
The last one I have came in on time, so that's one of the articles that's.
Okay.
So I'll put that in.
So if we have enough time, and considering it's 10:20, do you guys agree that we should
I
just?
think it's a great idea if we could do it.
Okay, great. Okay,
A
so
lot tonight.
we have done a lot tonight. So we still accept it though, right? Can I hear a motion to accept it?
Because we can always reopen it.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, move that the Board of Selectmen accept the 2019 annual town meeting warrant as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Now motion to close.
Madam Chair, move that the Board of Selectmen, excuse me?
We close it each time. We open it and close it each time, and then we open it again.
Yep.
Move that the Board of Selectmen close the 2019 annual town meeting warrant.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
So point of just background, and I know it's late, but I just wanted to understand that point. In that opening and closing, why is it important that we accept? Or does it matter? No, we opened the warrant, but we wanted to close it so we could discuss it at the next meeting. So why do we have to go through that exercise of accepting the warrant as presented as well? Or was that, it's just?
So I think we have to accept the petitions that are in there, right? We have to,
Right.
at this point, the citizens petitions, all of the municipal ones. I think we just need to, it's the first time, right, that we get them all together.
But we know that if we're not talking about, it's a formality question, if we know we're not talking about it until the next meeting. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing, but not boxing us out of the ability to be able to talk about it
No, because you
at the
open it
next
back
meeting.
up.
Not that it
Yeah, I
matters,
think
because we already voted for it.
If I recall
It's a formality.
previous, we just, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item is to accept an easement for Ray Street subdivision. Sorry.
What makes us feel better, it's technically only like 9:20 right now, right? That's how it should feel.
That's how it should feel. I don't know if, Megan, you had anything to say about this, or if, it's from Jean, but.
So this acceptance of the easement is for a drainage right-of-way and access easement for maintenance of said drainage area. This is standard language that the town uses for subdivisions, and the subdivision has been approved by the planning board, and this is the next phase in moving forward and executing the subdivision.
Yeah, okay. Great, do I hear a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen accept and sign the drainage and access easement for the Ray Street subdivision.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. The next item is a welcome guide for board and committee members. So this is something that Chris and I actually drafted when we were the sub-appointment committee. And honestly, I think Lori was transitioning some items to Jillian, and it was last on her desk to look at, and when she was going through these things of, should I give this to Jillian? I said, oh, let's actually close that out, because I still think it's a good idea to provide to new board members so that they know general rules. There's nothing in here specific to any particular board, so it's more, this doesn't mean that chairman of all the boards out there wouldn't give some guidance and introduction to their board to new members, but this is more for generally, knowing about things like they have to be compliant with open meeting law, and they have to understand that they shouldn't, deal with a conflict of interest, and kind of very high level things. So I think that we might have presented this to you guys at one point a long time ago, but anyway. Did anyone have any questions on this?
We did have something like this years ago for the Finance Committee, and it was very comprehensive. It actually even had municipal language as a new person, all the acronyms, all this.
Yeah, because you don't know these things.
You don't know these things. And I put a call into the MMA Maya, but they didn't call me back. They have all kinds of different brochures, so I think this is a great idea. I just wonder if we can maybe make it even better, maybe a little bit more comprehensive. And so I'd like to see if MMA Maya has one. Unfortunately, I do not have the Finance Committee one that was really comprehensive. Is almost a lot of that could have been used for the other boards. So I would just suggest that maybe it continue to be a work in progress till we.
Either I thought acronyms were, that's a good suggestion, because that
it's a whole different municipal language, and it
Totally.
rolls off of everybody's tongue, and you're sort of like, when you're new,
Are there other, because there, like you said, it's comprehensive, so rather than just say, go look at more things, are there things that jump off from, and I know you don't have that old one, but are there other things that they should consider or look at? I mean,
well, that was just one example. There was also some language, and it might touched upon in here of just board collegiality and stuff like that is always a good thing to put in these manuals. But I guess I would maybe suggest reach out to people who've served on boards for a while and see if they've had any suggestions. I mean, if we're going to do the undertaking, and it's not that it needs to be rushed, I do think it's a great idea. I think we,
well, you've been working on this you haven't been on the appointment subcommittee together for over a year.
You know, I mean, trying to find something like this out there was just, I mean, hours and hours and hours. And it's either these things that are just god-awful gobbledygook or are kind of too light and airy. And I think one of the things that Lori did for us is sort of pull it together in a professional manner. Absolutely, I think the acronyms and maybe also where to get some resources are important. I think the idea of this is that at least everybody starts off at the same place, right? That the idea is that these committees are everything from affordable housing to zoning. And so what people's interests are and how much, how in-depth, we want them to all have the same starting point. And so my thought, I think, with this is get this out there, give them a starting point, and then as committees want to do something, then they can share it among themselves and bring up a best practice. But let's start with something.
What if,
I agree, because it's going to sit on a shelf again if we, I mean, it's not like it can't be changed. It can be a living document.
well, what if we approached it from, because I remember when you brought it up, and it's one of those things, you bring it up, and then it's just really easy to put it in the back burner. I mean, what if we make a point of saying that this will be part of the discussion at next meeting, any additional information, because this is the first time in a while that we've been able to talk about it. Any additional information we'd like to add, bring to the next meeting. If there's not additional information, adopt. If there's only minor edits, we can adopt, or if there are more substantial points made, I mean, it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I would find this sufficient when I think of my past experience on boards. But it would be interesting, I mean, now that we're having this conversation, maybe it might just spark more people to offer feedback. Would that be, I mean, then that gives the MMA time to actually reply back and get more information in front of you.
That's fine if that's what you guys want to do. I would definitely like to ask, though, that we not just let this continue on and on.
I appreciate that you did the work. I think that's.
I think it's a great idea. We should have had it all.
I mean, someone that reached out to me, in fact, I gave it to them and said, this is a draft, but just so you have some insight, because they wanted to know
Where do you start?
information. So, I mean, if I'm doing that, then.
I mean, I would have, we can amend stuff like this at any time. This isn't a law. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem accepting it, but like you said, we can be distributing this even now for the one person we've appointed between now and our next meeting, which is Adrian, who's already, by the way, based on Facebook, appears to be attending meetings and has been fully onboarded onto sustainability. So, I guess I'm indifferent to the decision that we make tonight, whether it's approved at this meeting or next meeting. I'm not indifferent to the work that you put into it, because I know that you put a lot of work into it and brought a necessary perspective, because sometimes we forget that we throw these people into these roles and then we just don't have the time to always double back with them.
All right, how about if it pleases the chair, I will check, see if the MMA has anything else, and among us here, we'll come up with some sort of list of best
Acronyms.
and acronyms, and that's.
Or even like websites where you can go to get more information, like for open meeting law, for Robert's
It's in
rules.
here. It's all, that's in here.
All right.
Yeah.
And I would put this on Selectman Nobley. It's not just on you, it's on all of us to read, because you shouldn't be forced to do our homework if there are things that I think I should. I just don't want you to feel like, okay, you have to go and do this work. You guys did, the 95% of the work. Now at this last 5%, it's okay. Is there anything else that we feel that we as selectmen would like to contribute before entertaining a motion? Again, I have nothing.
Okay, it will be reappearing then on the next meeting agenda.
Thank you,
Let's
Madam
move
Chair.
on, since it's 10:30.
Sometimes too, an email blast goes out to other towns to see if they have one, when we're looking for something to update the news. So perhaps that could be done as well, just to see if they respond back.
Okay, let's move to, we have a donation from Helen Condra to the library in the amount of $1,000.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen accept the donation from Helen Condra in the amount of $1,000 to be used for library supplies.
Wow.
Very
And
generous. Very nice.
in addition, a letter be sent to Helen if this donation is accepted, thanking her.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Sorry, Dick.
I was delayed a second. Yeah, I'm all in favor.
All right. I think motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Helen, for that generous donation. And now we have a donation from Arlene Cox to the library in the amount of $100 that will also be used for library supplies.
Move that the Board of Selectmen accept the donation from Arlene Cox in the amount of $100 to be used for library supplies.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Arlene, for that donation. Very much appreciated.
And sending a letter to her.
Yes.
Also, yeah.
Okay, the next item is affordable unit resales.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen waive the right of first refusal for 70 Compass Point.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is 180 Chickering Road, Unit 104C.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen waive the right of first refusal for 180 Chickering Road, Unit 104.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And finally, One Harvest Drive, Unit 303.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen waive their right of first refusal for One Harvest Drive, Unit 303.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I believe that I skipped an update on the senior center. 2-minute update. Sorry for that, Megan.
That's okay, because we initially had anticipated that we would be giving the board a more full presentation on the architecture and the site. We have continued over the last week to meet 2 times with Mainco to shore up our view on the site plan, which then lends itself to the design, to make sure that we're in line with the initial cost estimate, construction cost estimate. And I think, Lynn, Suzanne, myself, and Jean are confident that we can now proceed in publicly showing the plans that accompany the great programming that you have seen. But we didn't want to publicly reveal a design if we didn't feel the town could actually accomplish construction. So we have come to terms that we can proceed, and we will have a presentation at the next Board of Selectmen meeting.
And again, could I just ask that somewhere in there reference how it has evolved?
Yes, because it has evolved significantly from what town meeting has seen to where we are today.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll have that on the next meeting agenda.
Correct.
I guess the last item I would say is, I think this is our last meeting with you.
It is, yes.
I'm very sad to say that, but obviously I wish you well in your next endeavor. I know it's a hard choice or hard decisions to make, but one that was the right thing for you. So I respect that, and you will be missed.
For community members' sake, that are probably wondering, what is she talking about? Megan got promoted to a nice new job as the chief executive. It's executive, town executive, right? You don't use the town manager position. Executive director of the town of Wellesley. So,
Well, you used to be for quite some time the assistant town manager.
Correct, yes.
And they promoted you, and prior to that, you were planning.
Yes, I was a planning director for, part of planning staff and planning director for 11 years. And one thing, not really associated with myself, but I would say 2 things, actually. One, thank the board and Andrew and the senior staff for the warm welcome. North Andover is a great place to work. The one thing I would say in your town manager search is I wish the timing had worked out differently, because I would have loved to have applied and been a candidate for your consideration. I think you will get top-notch candidates. And the one thing I really think that should be conveyed is how efficient North Andover's government is, because that's a real selling point. A lot of the communities have, you look at Lexington, and there's a reason the town manager makes that much, not just because of the size of the community, but the number of meetings that they attend. And I really have to say, they meet weekly, if not bi-weekly on occasion, knowing, being a close friend of a Lexington Selectmen. So I will also just say that I think the work-life balance that you put forward is incredible, given how much this board and other boards, including, the planning board and CBA, who I've been able to interact more with, get done. So I think the efficiency of your leaders and your staff is really something that should not be undersold.
Great, thank you for that. All right, well, yes, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
It's our loss, but
But we understand.
we do understand.
It's like you're kind of going back home, even though it's not your home, in a way, so we do understand.
It is with an hour commute, but yeah.
Yeah, I know, I did.
Well, you at least got to enjoy the best of us when you joined our town 2 weeks after the Columbia gas disaster, and were put in charge of implementing some of the earliest programs for recovery. So I know specifically you helped oversee the Shop Local Weekend, and then its successor program, where I don't think that we technically called it the Shop Local Weekend, but it was the
Shop Local
$25.
2.
Yeah, Shop Local 2. But you and Lori Berzloff and the town hall staff, thank you, because that was it remains a very frustrating time for us as officials and residents. And so having those steady hands at town hall were really reassuring. And a lot of credit is given to Andrew Mailer. A lot of credit is given to the whole staff. And so as someone who's saying farewell, I personally want to say thank you for being part of the team that took such good care of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You certainly hit the ground running.
Thank you, Megan.
Dee and I definitely did do that.
Oh, we're not done with D, though. So
No,
Yeah,
but
don't take her with you.
it also goes to the staff that's here in terms of getting us up to speed very quickly, and I can't say enough about the staff and the level of professionalism and customer service that they provide on a daily basis.
Very good. All right, I think that's all that we had on our agenda, so.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait, hold on, I'd just like to,
Oh, gee, that's-
Second.
What time zone are you in,
Dick? I wasn't able to be there tonight, but this is kind of like the next best thing. It's actually worked out pretty cool. So I want to thank Chris McClure and Brian Frazier for setting it up. They did a great job. We actually did a dry run of it last week to make sure it was going to work the way we expected, and it did. And and also to my fellow board members, thank you for indulging this, and to the staff, Lynn, Megan, Dee, Laurie, thanks. And a special thanks to Paul and Stan, who I've had the great pleasure of staring at the back of their heads all day. Because although it looks like I'm in front of you, I'm actually looking from behind, so.
Well, I asked you that question, so what do you, while we were waiting, what do you see, Dick?
Well, I
I'm
see
kind
the
of glad you didn't
table.
answer till
I
now.
see my disembodied head on the table. I see the table, and I see the back of Stan and Paul's head.
There you go.
Mr. Henry.
Well, second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right,
Okay.
we're adjourned.
There we go. Thank you.